If your job at a healthcare facility includes disinfecting against viruses, you know prevention is the best medicine, and maintaining healthy spaces starts with a healthy cleaning routine. Grainger's world-class supply chain helps ensure you have the quality products you need when you need them, from disinfectants and cleaning supplies to personal protective equipment, so you can help deliver a clean bill of health. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
A warmer from the hello, welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the Houston Family Podcast. We've got a great podcast for you. Joining me in segment number 2, we're going to be talking to Nick Lorensen. He does great work over at Mid-Major Madness, and we're going to be discussing with him just the lay of the land with regards to some of these mid-majors, the way that some of them have been ascending/declining. On top of that, we're going to be taking a look at a few interesting races that we're getting out there with regards to a lot of these conferences and why we've seen things just be so wonky this year in college basketball. He's going to be joining me in segment number 2 in the final segment. Going to get you guys picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Tuesday as we hit some bank shots. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one of two ways to be able to fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at Jaden_D1. Keep in mind, letters EM, name does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. The other way is via an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Did not get in any Twitter/X questions today, but we had a great day of college basketball on Monday, including now every team in college basketball having at least one win. So let's dive in, try to find some trends, and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
Yay, verily, for Mississippi Valley State, who gets a win 57-51, the final in this one. By the way, of intrigue, you did have 7 points and 22 rebounds from Brian Miles, so he had a very nice save for Prairie View, as Prairie View did win the rebound battle by a count of 41-32, but for Mississippi Valley State, against a Prairie View team that generates a bunch of turnovers, they won the turnover battle 19-6, and for Mississippi Valley State, Raekwon Brown, 21 points. Mississippi Valley State only shoots about 34% from the floor, but took much better care of the ball, and Mississippi Valley State, nobody deserves to lose them all, and they will not lose them all. They get their first win of the season. You also saw out there in the Coastal Conference, UNC Wilmington go down to Campbell. Campbell was a pretty nice size 8 to 9 point underdog at home, and they get the job done in what was a very stunning double overtime game, 105-100, as Darzarian White had himself a performance for UNC Wilmington. 38 points, 9 rebounds, but Wilmington loses the rebound battle 41-32. They play even up on the glass, and Anthony Delarosa, 34 points, 11 rebounds of his own. So that was a very fun one. Fortunately, our DK Network right to pick, that was the over in Alabama A&M and Florida A&M. That was one where Alabama A&M, they scored 25 points in the second half, and they fall to Florida A&M 76-58, and for Alabama A&M, 23 turnovers on 21 made baskets. That's just not going to cut it. And Florida A&M actually went 7-12 from 3 with Keith Lamar throwing in their 29 points. So he had himself a very nice day. One of your top cover 8 teams in all of college basketball. Texas A&M, Corpus Christi, depending upon your number, either got a cover or a push. They closed in a lot of spots more around 12.5, so a lot of places mark this one as a loss depending upon the closing numbers, since that's how the just against the spread splits do work. But 91-79, they do get it done against Houston Christian, and this has also been a really good under team in Texas A&M, Corpus Christi. It's Houston Christian team, though, they just do a really good job of giving up points, as they allowed Corpus Christi to get to the free throw line 28 times. They won 24 of 28 at the charity stripe, and for Houston Christian, they had 30 big points in this one out of Marcus Green, and really nobody else did anything else. So that was a little bit of an issue. What has been no issue all season long is being able to make some money. Taking a look at these guys, as it has been a nice season all season long out there in the SWAC for fading old Arkansas Pine Bluff, as They are now 8-16 against the spread as they fall to Texas Southern by a count of 77-70. As for Arkansas Pine Bluff, they go 14 of 36 from three-point range, but they lose the turnover battle 11-7. They lose the rebound battle 33-32, and Texas Southern was able to do a nice job inside despite going just 9 of 28 from three-point range. So the fate of Pine Bluff, that has been on, and for Prairie View, they are actually 9-17 against the spread. Mississippi Valley State has had a better cover rate than those schools we have seen out there in the MEAC. A few teams being able to rise and fall as well, and the team that has really been able to maximize for you, NC Central. Another nice win and cover for them. They're now 15-7 against the spread, 93-81. They were able to take down Delaware State. As for NC Central, Po Boy King, that is a great name. He was able to spearhead the effort in this one. 34 points, goes 5-9 from 3 for an NC Central team that goes 12 of 26 from 3. Now, Delaware State, against one of the best three-point shooting defenses in the country, won 11 of 28 from distance and won the turnover battle 12-9, but they got pummeled on the glass 36-24. A very strange game where everything that you knew and loved about those teams, it felt like it went to mush, and right now what has went to mush has been any team that plays overtime against Kansas State. It's just absolutely remarkable that you've got Jerome Tang now 12-0 in overtime games at Kansas State. 94-90 at the final, so Kansas State does not cover the spread, but they are able to get the outright win. As West Virginia at one point, I believe, was down 25 points. Might have been 23, but they made a Herculean run to get back into this one. 13 of 33 from three-point range as Raekwon Battle, Kirk Risa, they were able to combine for 53 points. Meanwhile, Kansas State, they went 15 of 31 from distance, and this was the Ty Perry game. He's been a little bit of a disappointment this year. Goes 6 of 11 from 3, 29 points. So he was able to bust out there, and for Kansas State, they win this battle despite the fact that they lose the turnover game by a count of 16-6. So 10 more turnovers for Kansas State, but won the rebound battle by a count of 48-40. Baylor, they've been solid against the spread at 16-9-2 ATS, and they go on the road and they get the job done against TCU. 62-54 the final. As for Baylor, they found their three-point shooting form. They go 9-22 from distance. Bit of a sloppy game as they lose the turnover battle 15-14, but Baylor is able to do a very nice job on the glass. They win that battle by a count of 41-29, and for TCU, they shot 33% from the floor and 5 of 19 from three-point range. You also had Miami show some good fight against North Carolina. North Carolina has been a relatively good cover team all season long, but this one was 75-71. North Carolina gets the win, but the return of Matthew Cleveland, oh so big for Miami. Cleveland, he was able to give the team 10 points, 11 boards. Didn't necessarily shoot it well, but just him being back out there on the floor with them dealing with the Nigel Pack injury is big, and the team as a whole went 14 of 30 from 3. Meanwhile, RJ Davis, 42 points, while Harrison Ingram, Armando Bacot, they only had to combine 13 points, but did supply 22 rebounds. North Carolina's been pretty solid against the spread at 16-12 ATS. Meanwhile, Miami, it's been up and down for them, but they were able to get a cover in this ordeal. And another team has been very fascinating to gauge all season long. It is out there in the Southland. That would be McNeese. McNeese, they had a nip-and-tuck game against Lamar. They get the job done, but no cover here. 58-56 the final as Lamar is now 16-9-1 against the spread. So they've been making you some good coin for McNeese. They were able to do a nice job of their defense, and they got just enough on offense to be able to skate by. Shahada Wells was able to throw in their 23 points, 6 rebounds. They needed every one of them. And Lamar, they go just 7 of 25 from 3, but played relatively even up on the glass with Adam Hamilton coming up big. 10 points, 13 rebounds, 5 blocks out of him. And then you want the big fade out there in the Southland. New Orleans, they have been 8-16 against the spread thus far this season. They were not in action on Monday, so you weren't able to fade them. But Incarnate Word, they've been 10-16 against the spread. And Nichols, they're now 15-10 against the spread. Nichols is a 9.5-point favorite, just barely get the job done. 92-82 the final. And you very nearly had a terrible beat here as Nichols was up in this game by a count of 83-57 with about 7.5 minutes remaining. You saw a nice bonsai charge from Incarnate Word, but Nichols able to hit some late free throws to be able to get this one in. As for Incarnate Word, they did go 22 of 31 at the free throw line. Nichols 18 of 26 from 3 with an 8 of 8 3-point shooting expose from Robert Brown III. He had 28 big points in this one. So it was a fun day of college basketball on Monday. And if you're looking at what we're getting overall in college basketball, it's still been a year of overs. 51% of games are going over the total. 2,409 overs to 2,313 unders, and home underdogs. They're starting to improve. They're now at 49.2% against the spread, 649, 670, and 22 against the spread. And if you look at the last 7 days in college basketball, it has been all about those home underdogs, 58, 49, and 2 against the spread, while overs, they're having a little bit of a tough time, 158 overs to 167 under. So that's what we're seeing in college basketball right now, and that's what we all got on Monday. Now let's take a look at the mid-major landscape with our mid-major guru and the man of mid-major madness, Nick Lorensen. He's going to be joining me next to talk a wide variety of different mid-majors and so much more right here on Chris Good Seats with myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the Beeson Family Podcast. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Chris Good Seats with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the Beeson Family Podcast. Always great to be joined by this man, Nick Lorensen. He does such good work over at Mid-Major Madness. Taking a look at this great game of basketball that we all know and love. I know that he's dialed in everything that we've been seeing the last few weeks. He also does great work over with Queens NC, a part of that coaching staff, as they're looking to build themselves up out there in the Atlantic Sun. To be able to follow Nick on Twitter/X, as that, and his last name, Lorensen, spelled Lorensen Sports altogether. And Nick, always great to have you aboard. Thank you.
Always great to hop on here, Greg. It was an interesting week in college hoops. I mean, top of the Mountain West continued to cannibalize themselves. UNLV picked up another big win. You have St. Mary's in South Florida, who are on two of the longest win streaks in college basketball. Dayton lost to George Mason. There's just a lot that happened this week. Parity everywhere in mid-major basketball.
Oh, there was parity all over the place in mid-major basketball and low-major basketball and high-major basketball. And just how do you take a look at the current landscape of this great sport that we all know and love? Because I just take a look at things with things like Grand Canyon losing twice. You take a look at these teams that have really been just struggling on the road in general. And I do think that it's going to lead to a very wide open march, especially with even a team like UConn losing earlier in the week against Creighton.
Yeah, I think it's going to be awesome for the sport. The NCAA for the last couple of years has been talking about expanding out the NCAA tournament to kind of weed out these teams that are surprises. But if you watch these 2 weeks of conference tournaments, there's going to be upsets galore, and teams that you really weren't expecting will probably make the NCAA tournament because there's been one solid team at the top, but the rest of the pack and a lot of these leagues have been real feisty and itchy. So I feel like we're going to see a lot of upsets in these conference tournaments, setting up for a great March. A couple teams that really aren't supposed to be in March Madness knock off a team and hopefully send a warning cry to the NCAA. Hey, we don't need to expand this thing out. These small teams are better than any big market can do for the sport.
Yep, I do think that it's going to be a lot of fun to take a look at a lot of these stretch run just races in college basketball. And I know that you were mentioning a lot of parity in mid-major college basketball. How do you take a look at that whack right now with Grand Canyon losing twice? Because there is a team out there in Seattle that if they're able to make the NCAA tournament, they're a team that I really think could be able to make some noise.
Yeah, the WAC hasn't been as strong as it's been the last couple of years, but a couple of these teams have really, really strong players that can help them push over that edge, pick up an NCAA tournament game. That's what you need in March. You need a takeover player, an interesting style of basketball. And a couple of these teams in the WAC do. I mean, I did not expect Grand Canyon to go out east, I guess you can say, and drop those two games in Texas against Abilene Christian and against Tarleton State. But the interesting part about this league is they seed on net ranking. So Grand Canyon, they could probably lose out and they'd still be the one seed, although maybe Tarleton will end up winning that conference regular season title. You know, they've won 8 straight. They went on a win streak of about 7 earlier this year, and they're doing this under interim coach. Billy Gillespie's been out all year because of medical issues ever since mid-November. Joseph Jones' bunch is just winning games. They're winning games. They've been sneakily up there at the top of the WAC all season. They had a good non-conference. They're 20-7. They're still transitioning into D1 basketball. A lot of the talk's coming about UC San Diego out of all the transitioning teams. But you have a Tarleton team who could win a conference tournament this year, just like UC San Diego, and they won't have anything really to show for it because they wouldn't be able to make the NCAA tournament. But you have a team like Seattle with Cam Tyson. He's an absolute baller. UT Arlington, Philip Russell. He's been playing great. The best 4 teams in this league are at the top of the league, but they're very close. It's going to be a fun week, 2 weeks from now. It's going to be fun in Vegas because you'll have the Mountain West, you'll have the WCC, you'll have the WAC, but the WAC tournament might be as entertaining as the Mountain West Conference tournament.
And you also have the Big West out here in Henderson as well. That's one that I actually attended last year. So you got a lot of fun mid-major college basketball out here in the great state of Nevada. Is joining me on the show, we do have Nick Lorensen, who does great work over at Mid-Major Madness, and he is joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And I do want to hit upon one of those mid-majors out there in the Big West as well. What do you just make out of this UC Irvine team, a team that was pushed to overtime over the weekend, but a team that I've looked at, and I truly think that they're one of those teams that they could be able to wreck some shop if they do make the NCAA tournament themselves, just with the way that their defense has traveled all season long.
Yeah, that's something about that program for a long time. That defense has just been able to carry. They always are able to have a great big man. Bent Leuchten was supposed to be that guy this year. He is that guy. But many people heading into the year, they lost Davis to Butler. They lost a couple other players to the transfer portal, Dawson Baker over to BYU, one of the other ones. They were question marks. Were they going to be able to do it again? They had an amazing, I believe they ran the table in the Big West last year, if not lost a game or two. And they won the regular season title, obviously one seed in the conference tournament. There were questions if they were going to be able to reproduce it, and they just have new guys popping up all the time. You have Devin Tillis, averaging 9.4 points per game. Justin Hone, who's averaging 12.9 points per game, shooting 46% from the field. That's another league, though. UC Irvine's a great team, but you have a UC Davis bunch with Elijah Pepper, who's the second best or third best scorer now in the country. You have Long Beach State with all their great guards. They had some really, really good wins in the non-conference. Cal State Northridge, who's up and coming. UC Riverside's been playing really good basketball this last month. I say it every year, basketball on the West Coast is better than basketball on the East Coast because these leagues have some great players. If you're a high school baller out West, you want to stay close to home. There's only a couple leagues you can select, different to the East Coast where you have, 15 leagues. West Coast basketball is at the best state it is right now. I know we haven't talked about the Mountain West. They have about 8 teams up there that can win it, but the Big West tournament's going to be great. The WAC tournament's going to be great. Even the WCC tournament is going to be great this year, because we don't know if Gonzaga will be that team in the final of St. Mary's, or if even St. Mary's makes the finals with Santa Clara and San Francisco playing good basketball.
Yep, there has been a lot of good basketball being played out west, I will say. The power conferences out west have not been as good as the ones out east. I am sorry, the Pac-12 has just not been that great this far this season, but those mid-majors, they have been rock solid, and on Tuesday, we are going to be seeing a lot of Mountain West action, and I do think that we've got some really good games that are going to be going down. That Colorado State versus Nevada game is one of intrigue. UNLV all of a sudden has been able to pull off a few wins as well. You've got Boise State having been a little bit up and down, and for New Mexico, they're actually going to be the team that's going to be off on Tuesday, and they're coming off of a ghastly loss against Air Force. But how do you just take a look at the tenor of the Mountain West right now? Because it feels like, much like we saw last season, San Diego State back on that rise.
Yeah, San Diego State is back on that rise, but earlier this week they lost to Utah State, who I actually think has the easiest path to win this conference because they're already at the top of the league. They're on a winning streak. These last 4 games, the only real tough one they have is New Mexico, and they're not playing in the pit. They're coming to the Spectrum, a place where Utah State is 12-1 this year. They seemingly win every year, but they have the winning track towards winning the title: Air Force, San Jose State, New Mexico, Fresno State. That's who I think will win the league. When we come to the NCAA tournament, I think there's a couple teams that can win a game. That's been a question for a long time with the Mountain West before San Diego State made its run to the Final Four last year is, can these teams win in March? I think San Diego State could be a second weekend team. I think if New Mexico's clicking and they don't play like they did against Air Force this weekend, they could be an Elite 8, a Final Four team with those 2 guards and the really, really strong front court they have. Nevada brings back everyone from an NCAA tournament team last year, and they're playing their best basketball of the season right now. Colorado State has a takeover player in Isaiah Stevens. Boise State has a team full of guys that have been playing together for a long time and have been playing winning basketball for a very, very long time. When you look at March Madness this year, these Mountain West teams aren't going to be pushovers. I know that a lot of high major people listen to it. They've been kind of writing them off the last couple of years. Don't write off these teams. There's a good chance we have maybe 3 Mountain West teams in the second weekend of the NCAA tournament.
Yep, it is going to be a lot of fun to see what we get out of the Mountain West moving forward, as there's a lot of solid teams, and we shall see if New Mexico is a team that has a lot of talent. They're going to be able to rebound from the calamity that we saw over the weekend, as our good friend Nick Lorensen of Mid-Major Madness is joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And do want to take a look at a little bit of what we're getting for Tuesday as well, because we were speaking about New Mexico and their tough loss. I want to get your thoughts on this team. It's little bit because I am from the home state, but the Wisconsin Badgers are going to be on the road facing off against Indiana. And we talk about some of these teams that have been rising and falling, and for Wisconsin, their stock has been dropping like Enron here in the month of February. They lost 4 out of their first 5 games in the month. When they have been winning, and it's not been too comfortable. Just what do you make out of the Wisconsin Badgers in general? And their outlook on Tuesday going up against a team that, well, they have similarly been struggling in the Indiana Hoosiers.
Yeah, this is a really good chance for the Badgers to kind of hit a good stride going into March. They entered the month 6th in the country. They had that huge game against Purdue. They lost against Nebraska earlier in that week. But they've just been dropping 6, 11, 20, and then they finally beat Maryland, who hasn't had that great of a team this week, last Tuesday. But you're playing an Indiana team that's been really, really bad this year, very beatable in Bloomington, which really isn't all that often that happens. Win 2 games there, and then you have the biggest momentum chance of all on Saturday afternoon when you're hosting a top 15 Illinois team. This is a very important game for Wisconsin on Tuesday, a very winnable one at that. If they're able to pull off 2 here, watch out if they beat Illinois. Wisconsin might be a sneaky 4-5 seed come March because those couple losses will knock them down a couple seed lines. But watch out for these Badgers, especially if they win on Tuesday. They have a really good chance.
For the Wisconsin Badgers, it has been shall we say, all over the place last few weeks for them. And just are there a few teams in general, whether they be mid-majors, whether they be high majors, that you're either a little bit more stock up down, or if you're a little bit more stock up on over the last few weeks, or a little bit more stock down on, because it has been a very interesting landscape. We've mentioned a lot of the teams that have been rising/falling. Who are a few that come to mind that you're just feeling them a little bit differently these days?
Yeah, I've been feeling awesome about this Charleston team. They've won 7 in a row now, ever since they lost UNCW, and they're on top of the league. They have the path to win the regular season title once again. People have slept on them all year because they weren't as strong as they were last year, but they're winning games, and they're in a very winnable league. So I like this Charleston bunch. They returned a bunch from that team last year. San Francisco's another one. I don't know if they'll win the WCC tournament. As much as I hate to say it, and I won't be watching it, I think that they can make the NIT as an at-large team. They played St. Mary's super close on Thursday. No one's been able to go into Moraga since non-conference and play close with the St. Mary's team. They've been blowing out every single team possible at home. San Francisco maybe made a statement on Thursday that they're the second best team in the WCC. So watch out for that. A team that I'm kind of losing a lot of stock in is Grand Canyon, because you can't lose games like that. You can lose at Tarleton in a packed atmosphere, but you got to bounce back after a loss like that. You've been the head honcho in the league all year, and you lose to an Abilene Christian team that's really struggled this year. So that's tough for that Grand Canyon bunch. I feel like Memphis is coming back up. You know, we talk about it every week with McNeese. I love how exciting they are. They've been playing great basketball. UNLV's been playing great basketball. Another team that I wanted to touch on, we usually talk about the A-10, and it kind of passed my mind, is Loyola Chicago. They just keep finding ways to win, and they aren't all too close. I mean, they pull away at the end. It's close for a good portion of the game, but they pull away at the end. They just turn it into a blowout. They keep finding ways. They could win a regular season title in the A-10 after having an abysmal first season where they finished dead last in the league, coming off an NCAA tournament bid. This Rambler bunch might have something special going on. Watch out for them winning the regular season title in the A-10.
Yeah, but it has been so interesting to take a look at the Atlantic 10 as well, because for Loyola Chicago, unfortunately for them, they just did a little bit too much damage to themselves in the non-conference portion to really be up for an NCAA tournament bid. They're well outside the top 70 in terms of KenPom, what have you, but how do you take a look at the tenor of the Atlantic 10, where obviously the clear top team is Dayton, but outside of that, you mentioned Loyola Chicago, you mentioned Richmond, teams like that. It does feel like there's a very big tier number 2 with those sorts of teams.
Yeah, it's really Dayton and everyone else. I know they've been struggling the last couple of weeks. They played 2 close games at UD Arena, and then they lost to George Mason at Eagle Bank Arena this week. But they're still the top dog in this league. They're the only chance if they don't win the conference tournament for a 2-bid league, because there's such a massive drop-off. Richmond's a really good basketball team. VCU's a really good basketball team, but they don't really have that one-star player that pushes them over the edge and makes them a real good mid-major team. You have Loyola Chicago. They have Dame Delican, who's been playing great down low, but there's no one too crazy on that team, and they're kind of coming out of oblivion. People won't really have that much stock on them. You have a team like Duquesne, who I was really high on. We talk about them all the time because that's my team heading into Friday, but they had a terrible second half of Fordham, lost to the Rams by double digits. It was not pretty. There's just a clear divide between Tier 1 with Dayton, Richmond, VCU, and Loyola in Tier 2. Then Tier 3 is completely up for grabs. Everyone else is beating up on everyone else. These top teams are beating up on everyone lower in the league for the most part. I still think A10 has a lot of room to grow.
Yep, and we always grow when you're on this podcast, Nick. You do such a good job. Take a look at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball. Sometimes it's just absolutely wild and crazy what we see, and you're able to make sense of the wildness and the craziness. Let the good people at home know what's on tap for you and how people are able to follow along on social media and other platforms.
Yeah, you can follow me along on Twitter at @NLorensen and at @Mid_Madness. We're heading into conference tournaments. We only have a week left before conference tournaments. I've been on this little plan because the ASUN doesn't have any tiebreakers out. They don't have any seeding scenarios. So today I started an Excel spreadsheet. So I'll have out, for all you sickos out there in the next couple of days, an ASUN seeding clinching scenario 500 Excel line piece for everyone. So of that, I'll be previewing all these conference tournaments, and I'll be coaching in probably one of the first games next Monday. So I'm looking forward to these next couple of weeks in college basketball. Nothing beats it. We have regular season titles on the line this week, and then we have wall-to-wall basketball for 3 weeks after that. There's nothing like that, Greg.
Oh, it is absolutely glorious, and you're speaking to a show that does speak to the sickos as well, as we embrace those people here on Coast to Coast Hoops. It's absolutely wild what we're getting in college basketball right now. It's a lot of fun, and Nick, he's one of the best at being able to take a look at it and break it down. A big thanks to Nick Lorensen for joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. And coming up next, it is that time of the podcast to give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Tuesday as we hit some bank shots. And we're back in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. It is always great to be joined by Nick Lorensen, who does such good work over at Mid-Major Madness. Taking a look at this tremendous game of college basketball that we all know and love. He is so dialed into all these teams. I know that he himself is doing great work trying to help out that Queens NC unit be able to get to the NCAA tournament, and every single time he joins this show, I do feel like we get just a little bit smarter. So big thanks to Nick for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast to give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Tuesday as we hit some bank shots.
Most financial establishments close at a certain time, but not here. It is time for a side and total on every game on today's betting board bank shots.
Do note that as per usual, any changes that are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at @unit_81, and we are going to be going in Las Vegas rotation order. This is where we go in time order. I would say we have the extra games at the bottom and everything like that. There are no conferences involving extra games that are going to be in action on Tuesday, so it is in nice, clean, easy time order. So how about if we get things started with 601, 602 on the card. It is Villanova. They play host to Georgetown. Georgetown is an underdog of 16 points, seeing a 15.5 out there as well. Total on this game, it is 140. At the 15.5, I'm going to be one to lay with Villanova. I did set them as a favorite of 16 points. It has been a Villanova unit that has been able to do a really tremendous job on defense. For Villanova, they do give up the 78 points to UConn, but prior to that, they had given up 62 points or fewer in their previous 4 games. That includes playing against Georgetown about a week or two ago. That was a game that landed 70-54. That was another game where the total was right around about 140. Georgetown shot 9 of 30 from 3. Villanova about 11 of 31 from distance, and I have a tough time thinking we're going to get something too far different in this one. You do have a Georgetown team that overall for the season shoots about 34% from 3, but they're well outside the top 125 in terms of points scored on per possession basis. They just have such a reliance upon Jaden Epps to be able to get the offense going. 18.5 points, 4.5 assists, but turns the ball over north of 3 times per contest, and in that first matchup, you had Georgetown turn the ball over 12 times. That's pretty much your season average. Villanova, they're very good at being able to cross their T's, dot their I's. This Villanova team, they're turning the ball over less than 10 times per contest. They're a top 5 team in all of college basketball in terms of their free throw shooting percentage as well. You've got some nice ancillary scores that'll be able to help out your main 2 down low, and Eric Dixon along Tyler Burton. Dixon has been your top scorer. He's been able to supply the team with 14 plus points per contest. And then you've got Mr. Mr. Burton, who gives you more like 8 points, but is able to give you 6.5 boards per contest. But for Villanova, it's not like there's some sort of amazing three-point shooting team. They shoot about 33% from the outside, and they just play a very slow and efficient style. With Villanova, they are well outside the top 275 in terms of total possessions per game. You've got a Georgetown team that they're not necessarily running in and gunning it. They're not necessarily playing super duper slowly, and for this Georgetown team, they certainly have been giving it up from three-point range all season long, 241st in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage, but that was a big weak point for Villanova last season. They've been much better at being able to guard the arc, but that's come a little bit more on the road rather than at home. They're allowing opponents to shoot 31% from three-point range away from home, 34% at home, but I just don't know if Georgetown has the pieces to be able to match up and to be able to exploit that. You've got Dontrez Styles, who's been able to give you double figures, but Rome Brumba has been a little bit up and down all season long. Other than Supreme Cook, you don't have a lot of rebounding, and I just see this being a lot of deja vu from what we saw first time around. Justin Morris come back. He's been efficient for Villanova, but not necessarily giving you a ton in terms of scoring. He's more of a good defender, and this Villanova team, they very much have taken on this defense-oriented style against a Georgetown team that legitimately is outside the top 275 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. With Georgetown, they have now given up at least 70 points in every single game that they have played this month, and they allowed 76 points to DePaul. That's not necessarily too terrific, but I do think that Villanova just continues this slow grinder style. I think that they're spotting that this is working out very well for them, so I did set my total 134. I'm looking at the under at Villanova, 15.5 or less, going to be willing to lay with them, set them as a 16-point favorite. 603, 604 on the betting board. Toledo is playing us in Northern Illinois. Northern Illinois, a 14.5-point underdog with your total 156 and 156.5. I set Toledo as a 17.5-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay it with Northern Illinois. It's been a rough season for them. They are outside the top 250 in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis. Now, you've been able to get a little bit more out of David Coit, who's been tremendous. He's been able to supply the team with 19 points per contest, shoots relatively well from three-point range, but past that, you just don't have a lot of reliability for a Northern Illinois team as well outside the top 250 in terms of rebound rate. Toledo, they've got their issues as well. Tyler Cochran giving you about 6 boards per contest is all that they have down low, and Tariq Nutter has been able to do a solid job all season long, give the team right around about 5.5 rebounds per game, but him being out of the fold has really caused for some frustrations with this Northern Illinois team. Northern Illinois, ever since he has went out of the fold, they have lost both of their games, and they gave up 70-plus points in both of those games and scored 63 points or fewer in both. And this is a Northern Illinois team that's looking to gun it. They are a top 100 team with regards to total possessions per game. They just haven't been able to bust out with their offense. 72 points or fewer in each of their last 6 games. Now, the good news is their rim protector, Yannick Conan Niederhauser, is back. He's been able to give you about 2 blocks, serves in there about 4.5 rebounds per game, but for Northern Illinois, they are turning the ball over about 13 times per contest. They're shooting 32.5% from 3. It's just all about what are you going to be able to get out of David Coit, and everyone else has just not been able to provide a lot. Meanwhile, you do have a Toledo unit that the ancillary pieces have really been able to step up in terms of an outside shooting perspective, because we have 2 guys in Raheem Moss along Dante Maddox. They combined for 32 points, 5.5 assists, 3 steals, and Maddox does shoot 42% from three-point range, but got a 43% three-point shooter in Andre Lutterson. Hopefully I said that correctly, who's been able to supply you with about 5 points per contest. You've got a 48% three-point shooter in Bryce Ford, who doesn't see a lot of minutes, but when he does get out there, he's been able to provide a little bit of pop for the team. I was mentioning Tyler Cochran a little bit before. He's a mid-30s point shooter, and for Toledo, this isn't quite the team that was number 1 last season in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. That was just absolutely ridiculous, but this is still a bunch that should be able to take it to a Northern Illinois team as well outside the top 275 in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. In Toledo, they themselves still 45th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, averaging about 7.2 points more per 100 possessions at home rather than in a roadside shoot score environment. Toledo well outside the top 200 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, so I do think that Northern Illinois going to be able to bust out a little bit more with their offense. I do think that the defense continues to be quite ghastly, though, and for Toledo, this has been a bunch that has now given up at least 76 points in 4 out of their last 5 games. So I did set my total 161.5. I'm going to be taking a look at the over. And with Toledo, I think that they outgunned this Northern Illinois team. Set them as a 17.5-point favorite. Laying the number and looking at the over. 605, 606 on the betting board. Central Michigan is going to be playing against Ball State. Ball State is an underdog of 3.5 points. So on this game, 134 to 134.5. Did set Central Michigan as the 1.5-point favorite. So here are 3.5. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Ball State. Ball State has been outside the top 250 with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. And they go up against a Central Michigan unit that they have left so much to be desired on offense. They shoot less than 31% from three-point range, bottom 50 team in all of college basketball with that regard. But Central Michigan despite them being 323rd in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, they've been able to do a relatively solid job on defense. They've been able to overcome the fact that they do turn the ball over North 13 times per contest, and they do get to go up against a Ball State team that has been touch and go with regards to rebounding. Now, you've got one nice player down low for Ball State that does a little bit of everything, Bashir Jihad. He's been able to supply 8 boards, 19 points, a steal, a block per contest while shooting 36.5% from 3. And Ball State as a whole, they do shoot 36.9% from 3-point range, but they do run into a Central Michigan team that at home is allowing opponents to shoot just 27.2% from 3-point range. Meanwhile, Ball State away from home, they allow opponents to shoot 36.2% from the outside. But the question is, who is going to be able to step up and be able to exploit that for Central Michigan? Because you've got to do it all guy in Anthony Pritchard, who's been tremendous. 13.5 points, 4.5 boards, 4 assists, but he's shooting from 3-point range right around about 27.5% from 3. As a team, they shoot about 30.2% from the outside. Now, been able to get a little bit more out of someone like an Aiden Rubio, who's been able to give you some points, shoots 40% from 3. Derek Butler also shoots 40% from the outside with his 10 points per contest. He's sort of like the lone 2 guys on the roster, though, that shoot above 28% from 3-point range. And for Central Michigan, you don't have a ton down low. Brian Taylor stands right around 6'6". He's been able to do a nice job, hauling in there about 7.5 rebounds per game, but for Ball State, I do think that they're going to be able to hold up on the glass. You've got some like a Mikey Pearson who's able to pop some threes. He gives you about 5 rebounds for a contest. Ball State, not the world's most impressive team with their rebound rate, but they're about 164th in college basketball. That's pretty formidable. They go up against a Central Michigan team that they've got their issues on the glass, clocking in 235th. Central Michigan certainly does a better job of being able to get up in your grill and being able to defend it. I do think that home court advantage is going to be big, especially when you're facing off against a Ball State team that has been rough with their offense. For Ball State, this team has failed to break the 70-point plateau in any of their last 4 games. Meanwhile, you've got a Central Michigan team that they themselves have not broken 70 in each of their last 5 games. So it is a little bit of a scenario of something's got to give. I did set my total at a 133.5. Here at the 134.5, I'm going to be looking at the under Central Michigan well outside the top 200 with regards to total possessions per game. And both of these teams have stepped up to the plate with regards to their defense as well. I mentioned Ball State's offensive issues. They have now given up 72 points for fear in regulation in 4 of their last 5 games as well, going up against a Central Michigan team not draining the 3. So looking at the under, and here at 3.5, taking the points with Ball State, set them as an underdog of 1.5. 607, 608 on the betting board. It is Davidson, and they're facing off against Dayton. The Dayton Flyers are a 9.5 point favorite. Total on this game is anywhere between 132.5 and 133. I did set Dayton as a favorite in this spot of 11.5 points. So I'm going to be willing to lay it. Just been a case where I can't trust this Davidson team on defense, because with Davidson, they don't necessarily force a lot of turnovers, and they've been dealing with quite a few injuries all season long. David Skogman, he stands right in the neighborhood about 6'10". He's been able to drain well north of 40% of his threes, but he's currently out of the fold. And then you take a look at that fearsome duo that you've got for Dayton. I mean, Dayron Holmes, Nate Santos, they're able to control things down low, being able to give you combined about 14.5 rebounds per game. Santos gives you 12 points on 42.5% 3-point shooting. Holmes, 2 blocks, 38% 3-point shooter, 20.5 points per game, and this Dayton team has been a top 25 team with regards to points scored on a per possession basis. They are in the top 25 with their 39.2% 3-point shooting percentage, only turned the ball over 9.5 times per contest, with a duo Kobe Elvis and Javon Bennett going into the building with about 7 assists to 2.4 turnovers per game, so get all sorts of efficiency there. Going up against a Davidson team that, in their own right, they do a solid job not turning the ball over, 10.3 turnovers per game, but you're now having to rely upon Grant Huffman doing a little bit of everything, 13 points, 5 boards, 5 assists. He's been able to give you a steal and a half per contest, but now your top 2 scorers with Skogman out of the fold and Huffman along with Reed Bailey, who's been able to chip in there 12.5 points per contest, combined to shoot less than 28% from 3-point range. And though both of these teams have been playing super duper slowly, I do think that you're going to be able to get enough efficiency for an over in this spot, because you do have a Davidson team that has that Connor Kuchera be able to shoot it halfway decent from 3-point range. It is a Davidson team that, all in all, they're only shooting about 32-33% from 3-point range, but I do think that they're going to be able to get a little bit of something going on with the way that Dayton has just been able to stroke it from 3-point range, with the way that Davidson has been really allowing it from 3-point range as well. That's a big reason why I do like what I like here. I do think that you're going to be able to get just enough points for an over, and Davidson, they're allowing opponents in a roadside shoot court environment to shoot about 35% from 3-point range. So circumstances Saints, where I did set my total 135.5. Going to be looking at the over. And with Dayton, I did place them as a favorite of 11.5 points, so also going to be willing to lay the number. 609, 610 on the betting board. It is Miami of Ohio hitting the road face-off against Bowling Green. Bowling Green is a favorite of 3 to 3.5 points. So on this game, it is 140.5. I set Bowling Green as a favorite of 5 points. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. Bowling Green has been a pretty solid defense this season. Now, they do have one big kryptonite. They do allow it from three-point range. They are outside the top 330 in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, and that is really where Miami of Ohio is able to excel. Miami of Ohio is about 86th in the country with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage. Now, it does balloon up to about 34.4% away from home, sub 30% when they are at home, but it's all about, can Bowling Green make this a game that's played a little bit more on the inside and in the interior? Bowling Green about 126th in all of college basketball with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, despite their rough three-point shooting defense, because you've got Jason Spurgeon along with Rashawn Agee, who have been able to combine for about 15 or so rebounds per game, and you just don't have that for Miami of Ohio. Anderson Marmot, he's been able to do a solid job since he came back from injury. He's been able to give you about 5 or so rebounds per contest, but it is Miami of Ohio team that's about 194th in the country with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, and they're giving up 15.9 points more per 100 possessions when they're away from home rather than when they are at home, and top scorer in this game, that is going to be on the side of Bowling Green. Now, Bowling Green, they both don't defend the three very well, and they don't necessarily pop it very well from three-point range, because you do have Marcus Hill supplying the team with north of 20 points per contest. He's done a nice job being able to give out a few assists. He and Trey Thomas are combining for just under 5 assists per contest, but he only shoots about 28.5% from three-point range. And you just take a look at this Bowling Green team. Jason Spurgeon, the big man, him shooting 35% from three. He is the lone guy on the roster that shoots north of 34% from the outside, but you do have a Miami of Ohio team that can be very hit or miss with regards to their outside shooting as well. They shoot as collective about 37.1% from three-point range, despite the fact that none of your top 5 scorers shoot above 36.7% from the outside. Their top three-point shooter this year has actually been Bradley Dean, someone who has been in and out of the fold. He was missing throughout much of the beginning part of the season, has come on, and he's been able to give the team about 7 points per contest, but not having really anything down low. You've got Derwishi Hunter, who's been a relatively solid distributor. He's been able to give the team right around about 12 points, pair of assists, shipping in there 35.5% from three-point range. But with Miami just being so janky with regards to their offense, they turn the ball over 11.5 times per contest. They really don't have a lot on the interior. I do think that for Miami of Ohio, they're going to have a tough time dealing with the size of Bowling Green, a top 130 team with regards to rebound rate. So I did set my line at a 147 with regards to this total. I'm going to be willing to take a look at the over. You've got a Bowling Green team that, even though they don't pop threes, they are willing to run it and gun it. This is a bunch as under the tutelage of Todd Simon that in all of his years over at Southern Utah was always looking to have the team in the top 75 with regards to total possessions per game. Bowling Green, they're up to 79th with this regard. And you've got a Miami of Ohio team that they're not like super duper up tempo. They're more around 249th in the country with regards to total possessions per game, but certainly giving it up on the interior. And I do think that this game is close enough for late game felling, as I did set Bowling Green as a 5-point favorite, as I do think that they get their style. So want to lay it with Bowling Green and going to be taking a look at this total over 611, 612 on the betting board. St. Bonaventure is going to be playing us a Loyola Chicago. Loyola Chicago is a underdog of 3 to 3.5 points. So on this game, it is 140.5. Did semi total 136.5. I like the under in this ordeal. Got a Loyola Chicago team that has been able to do a nice job of being able to step up with their defense. They're a top 55 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, going against a Bonnie's team, which it's been sliding away for them in terms of defense, but they are still a squad that they play very slowly. They're outside the top 250 with regards to total possessions per game, going up against a Loyola Chicago team that they themselves are rather slow in control, but I did have to set my line at 4.5. I'm going to be willing to lay with St. Bonaventure, and the biggest reason is that Loyola Chicago just has not quite been the same team away from home as they have been at home. At home, they're allowing opponents to shoot about 30.5% from three-point range, north of 38% on the road, and for Loyola Chicago, they're, as a matter of fact, 22nd in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but they give up 18.2 points more per 100 possessions away from home rather than when they are at home. Meanwhile, you've got a St. Bonaventure team that is actually giving up a higher three-point shooting percentage at home rather than on the road. It drops to about 30.5% away from home. It's more around 33.7% when they are at home, but for St. Bonaventure, I do think that they're going to play their relatively slow and controlled game, and for Loyola Chicago, it's been so intriguing to look at this team on the glass. They don't have a single guy that gives you north of 5 rebounds per game, and yet they're a top 100 team with regards to rebound rate. You've been able to have pair of guys in Desmond Watson along with Miles Rubin chip in their 4.5 rebounds per game. And for Watson, he's able to shoot about 40% from three-point range. Dame Edelkuhn, you were hoping for a little bit more out of him towards the beginning part of the season. He became a little bit of an afterthought, and now he's been able to burst onto the scene. He's been able to give the team right around about 9.5 points per contest in very limited minutes. So, he has been a low-usage, high-performance sort of guy, 9+ points in each of the last 6 games. And for Loyola Chicago, the turnovers still a little bit rough, 12.8 turnovers per contest in terms of turnovers on a per-possession basis outside the top 240 in all of college basketball. Going up against a Bonnie's team that they do a nice job retaining the ball, 10.9 turnovers per game, while each of their top 3 players that made at least 1 3 this year have been able to shoot at least 39% from three-point range. Moses Flowers, Micah Adams-Woods, Charles Pride, all on that front. You've got Charles Pride, who's been able to do a nice job pulling in their 6 boards per contest, while Chad Venning, along with the man formerly known as Jan Farrell Isamovis, we said that correctly, combining for about 10.5 or so rebounds per game. I do think that St. Bonaventure going to be able to do a little bit of a better job on the inside. It is a Loyola Chicago team that comes in hot. They have won 7 straight games. They have held each of their last 3 opponents to fewer than 67 points. But I do think that for the Bonnies, a bunch that, if you take out the overtime session that they played against Davidson, because that was a game that was 68-68 in regulation, they've given up 72 points or fewer in each of their last 4 games, is going to be able to do a nice job winning a game that's going to be relatively slow and controlled, and in my opinion, is going to be one on the boards for the Bonnies. I did set my line at 4.5. I'm going to be willing to lay up to 4 with St. Bonaventure and made my total 136.5. Also diving in on the under. 6-13, 6-14 on the betting board. Wisconsin, it's a road face-off against Indiana. Indiana is a 4.5 to a 5-point underdog, and your total on this game between 141.5 and 142.5. I made Wisconsin a 6.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay it on the road. This really speaks to how out I am on this Indiana team. I mean, it has been so bad. They are outside the top 130 in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis, and I wish I could put it any other way. Indiana just doesn't have guards. Like, you've got Trey Galloway, who's been able to give you about 11 points, 4 assists per contest, but with them having Xavier Johnson being off and on injured all season long, they've been relying upon perhaps having CJ Gunn give you a little bit more, but he has not been able to develop whatsoever. It's been a lot of Malik Renew and Khalil Ware having to do a little bit of everything. They're combining for about 15.5 rebounds, 31 points per contest, and despite the fact that they've got those numbers, Indiana is well outside the top 125 with regards to rebound rate as well. It's just been a ghastly season for them, and Indiana is really allowing it from the outside as well. This Indiana Hoosiers defense, in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, is 246th, though Wisconsin, they are allowing a lot of open looks as well, especially when they leave Madison, Wisconsin, allowing opponents in a roadside-neutral court venue to shoot 39.5% from 3-point range. That is outside the top 315 nationally, and for Wisconsin, they're well outside the top 125 with regards to their points allowed on a per possession basis. So it has been a team that has been in the top 45 nationally with regards to rebound rate. They've been able to do a solid job executing on offense, even with AJ Storr shooting just 30% from threes, being able to supply the team with 16 points per contest. You've got Stephen Krall, you've got Tyler Wall, combining for about 13.5 boards. They both give you between 11 and 12 points per game, and it's a team that as a whole, they shoot about 34% from three-point range. Them having John Blackwell be in and out of the fold has been hurting them, and ever since he has returned, he just has not been himself. The last time John Blackwell was able to get to double figures, ironically enough, was against Indiana on January 19th, but I do think that for Wisconsin, they're going to be able to get just enough out of their backcourt. I think that they're going to be able to win the battle down low, and just in general, Indiana, in my opinion, it just doesn't have enough guard play to be able to win this one. When these two teams hooked up last month, Wisconsin won that game 91-79 on a night where Indiana shot 42.9% from three-point range. I don't think that Lightning is going to strike twice now. Also, don't think Wisconsin shoots quite 46.5% from three-point range, but did set by total 144.5. Even though neither of these teams are playing quickly, both of these teams have been highly inefficient on defense, and I do think that this is going to be a game close enough for late game fouling. So, looking at the over, set by total 144.5, and with Wisconsin willing to lay up to 6 with them. 6-15, 6-16 on the betting board. George Mason hits the road face-off against Fordham. Fordham is a home underdog of 2 points, and your total on this game, it is 137.5. I made George Mason the 4-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. George Mason has been so strong on the interior this season, and I feel like this is just a really bad matchup for Fordham, as this George Mason bunch, a top 30 team in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. Now, they really give it up from 3-point range, but Fordham really doesn't have jump shooters on their team. They shoot about 31.9% from 3-point range. Metter has been able to give you about 10.5 points, shoots 36.5% from 3-point range, but I know that he has been dealing with a little bit of injury recently. He's had a grand total of 1 point in the team's last 2 games combined, so that's not great to say the least, as he and Antrell Charlton are combining for about 6 assists per contest to your main facilitators. But for Fordham, other than Metter, you don't have a single other guy that gives you north of 10 points per contest, and they turn the ball over 13 times per game, going up against a George Mason team that is solid at being able to just hold up down low. They're not a team that's necessarily going to do a lot in terms of the outside, so Fordham should be able to get more clean possessions in this one. But also with George Mason, this bunch has been able to shoot about 35% from 3 and 75% at the free throw line. And if you do get in a nip and tuck scenario, each of your top 4 scorers for George Mason are shooting at least 76.8% the charity stripe, 3 of them shooting north of 83% the free throw line, with Keyshawn Hall being a do-it-all guy. 17 points, 8.5 boards per contest, shoots about 35% from 3-point range. They do go up against a Fordham team that as well has been pretty tough on the inside. You've got someone in Abdul Sambilia, who we've been seeing his play fall off a little bit, but still giving you multiple blocks per contest, right around about 6 or so rebounds per game. It's a Fordham team that's about 143rd in the country with regards to rebound rate, but George Mason, they are 44th with this regard. It's traveled relatively well. Amari Kelly is able to give you 6 boards, 12.5 points, while shooting 47% from 3-point range as well. And it has been a Fordham team that all season long, they've been giving up more points per possession at home rather than on the road. They're just sneaking into the top 100 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. But for Fordham, at home, they're allowing opponents to shoot 41.2% from 3-point range. They are overall 350th in all of college basketball in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting rate, and only Lindenwood and Wright State are allowing a higher 3-point shooting percentage at home than Fordham. So I do think that this is a little bit of a rough matchup, with George Mason being so good down low and Fordham just really suffering from the perimeter. I did set my line at 4. I'm going to be willing to lay it with George Mason, and I do think that for Fordham, they're going to be giving up a lot of threes. Recognize that George Mason outside the top 225 with regards to total possessions per game, but going to be willing to go over in this spot. I could see some late game fouling in this one as well. So somebody told 138, look it over. Oh, George Mason willing to lay up to 3.5 with them. 617, 618 on the betting board. UMass hits the road to face off against George Washington. Our nation's first president is a home underdog of 7.5 points. So on this game, it is 158.5. Set my line at 6.5. So here at the 7.5, I'm going to be willing to take the points. It has been a no good, very but terrible slide for George Washington, who really looked good out of conference, but things have been slip sliding away for them recently. I will say this though about George Washington. This team has been so different when they've been at home rather than on the road. Like their 3-point shooting splits, for instance. They're allowing opponents to shoot 30% from 3-point range at home, north of 40% away from home. And George Washington slid all the way down to being 210th in the country with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, but they're allowing 19.1 points more per 100 possessions when they are away from home rather than when they are at home. And they go up against a UMass unit that they themselves have been giving up from 3-point range. UMass is allowing opponents to shoot 36.3% from 3-point range in a roadside score venue. We've noticed UMass slow it down a little bit, and they're about 90th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but giving up 11.9 points more per 100 possessions when they leave home rather than when they are at home. Now for UMass, they are going to be able to control things down low. You've got the Twin Towers in Josh Cohen along with Matt Cross, who will be able to combine for about 15.5 boards, 31.5 points per game. Both guys shooting the mid-30s from 3-point range. For UMass team, that they really do struggle in that department. They only shoot about 31.5% from the outside, but UMass also a top 55 team with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis, going up against a George Washington team that has been turning the ball over about 12.5 times per contest. You've got James Bishop, who's been a nice go-to scorer, supplying the team with about 18.5 points, throws in their 4 assists per game, but they're dealing with an injury right now to their numbers 2 scorer in Darian Buchanan, who has also been able to give you 6 boards to go along with his 15 points per game. And this was a very top-heavy team to start with for the George Washington team. When Buchanan is out there, you got 4 guys that give you 12-plus points per contest. You've got from there like 2 guys in Jaquai Hodson along with Mr. Autry, who are able to combine for about 12 points per contest, and then not much else. So you do have 1 good rim protector in Babatunde Inkyungbola, who doesn't give you a lot of scoring with only about 4 points per contest, but throws in there nearly 3 blocks, 5.5 rebounds per game, does a solid job down low. But this is a very shallow team. But you do have a guy in Anton Smith Jr. who has been able to shoot a ball from 3-point range, and with the injury, he has been seeing a few more minutes, and he's been able to take it, and he's been able to run with it. Not saying he's been amazing by any stretch of the imagination, but he scored 27 points in the last 4 games, shoots about 37% from 3-point range. That should be able to give this team a little bit of a leg up. And for George Washington, with having someone like Maximus Edwards, having the versatility that he does, going up against a UMass team that is going to be able to win the battle down low, I do think that George Washington is going to be able to hold in there. It is a UMass team that has been looking to play a little bit more slowly recently, and it is a GW team that I do think is going to be able to step up a little bit more with their defense. They have given up 79 plus points in each of their last 5 games. I really do think that they just need to get home in general, as prior to the month of February, this was a bunch. I'm not saying that they were playing amazing defense by any stretch of the imagination, but things were improving there. Last time these two teams hooked up, UMass won that game by a count of 81-67 on a night where UMass, they were able to shoot north of 50% from floor, and George Washington shot 36% from the field. I do think that you see things iron out a little bit more here, so I did set my line at 6.5. Going to be willing to take 7 plus here with George Washington, and made my total 156.5. So also looking under 619, 620 on the betting board. Western Michigan, it's the road face-off against Eastern Michigan, and Eastern Michigan is a underdog at home of 1.5 points. So on this game between 144.5 and 145.5. Made Western Michigan a 2-point favorite. I'm not willing to go any further than the 1.5 that I'm seeing right now, but I'm going to be willing to lay the 1.5. Both of these teams are just sad and sorry, and Eastern Michigan actually has the top scorer in this game. That would be Ty Acuff. Acuff has been one of the best scorers in all of college basketball with 22 points, 3 assists, but you just need him to keep firing up shots. He only shoots 43.5% from the floor, 29.4% from three-point range, and for Eastern Michigan, you don't have a single guy on the roster that gives you north of 5 rebounds per game. Jared Billingsley has been a little bit better with about 5 boards per contest, but Western Michigan should be able to win this game from the inside. Both of these teams have really been giving it up from three-point range. Both of these teams well outside the top 225 in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis, but Western Michigan, to their credit, they're about 89th in the country with regards to their rebound rate. You've had someone in Titus Wright be able to do a nice job, be able to supply the team with right in the neighborhood of about 4.5 rebounds per game, and now you've got the 7-footer back in the fold in Javonte Brown, who's able to give you 9.5 points, 4.5 boards. He's able to be a nice interior threat, while Western Michigan also along the outside has Seth Hubbard, who's been able to supply 15 points for a Western Michigan team that they do shoot about 34.5% from 3. Now, if you got trepidation with Western Michigan in a nip-and-tuck game, they shoot 64.5% in the free throw line. That's one of the worst marks in all of college basketball, but not like this Eastern Michigan team is much better. They're shooting 67% at the free throw line, and Orlando Lovejoy has been able to be a nice number 2 scorer, giving you about 10 points, shooting about 18% from three-point range. So he has been able to give you about 2.5 rebounds per game as well. So you've got a lot of issues with this Eastern Michigan team, and for Western Michigan, it's not great to say the least, but at the very least, they've been able to win 2 straight games. The defense has been there, giving up 72 points or fewer in 4 of their last 5 games. Meanwhile, for Eastern Michigan, they have failed to get past the 70-point plateau in each of their last 3 games. So, good old situation of something's got to give. I set Western Michigan as a 2-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number, and did set my total 140. Both of these teams rather controlled with regards to their tempo, so looking at the under, and I'm going to be willing to lay it with Western Michigan. 621, 622 is the DK Network right at pick. You've got Kentucky on the road facing off against Mississippi State. Mississippi State between a 3.5 to a 4-point favorite, and your total on this game, you're finding it anywhere between 156 and 157. Opener here was 157.5. When I posted up this write-up, it was 156.5, and I'm seeing that at most books. So if you still have 156.5, you're good. I set my total at 153, so legitimately anything of a 153.5 or more, I do like the under on, and that is going to be my write-up. Initially, I was thinking we were going to get Mississippi State as like a home underdog here. Bookmakers thought otherwise, so that was a little bit unfortunate because I was really banking on that being the write-up pick, but still do see some good value on the under, as this is going to be a battle of strength on strength. You've got a Kentucky team that is leading the country in terms of their three-point shooting percentage at 41%. They're looking to run it and gun it, number 4 in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Meanwhile, Mississippi State, they're outside the top 170 with regards to total possessions per game. They're a team that is very good at guarding the arc, number 4 in all of college basketball in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, and I lean to the defense here. Another reason why I do lean to the defense is that Kentucky on the road has actually been able to play some halfway decent defense recently. Their last 2 road games against LSU and Auburn, I mean, they gave up 59 and 75 points. It doesn't sound like much, but at the very least, when Kentucky has went on the road, they've shown a heartbeat. On the road, they're actually a top 110 team with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. They're actually giving up a full point less per 100 possessions at a road/huge-score venue rather than at home. And they go up against a Mississippi State team that's right around 127th in all of college basketball in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. They're a better shooting team than they were last season, but I mean, there was no place to go but up. They literally were 363rd out of 363 D1 teams in terms of three-point shooting percentage last season. There's now 362 D1 teams this year, so He knew that they were going to be improved there. He's got Tolu Smith ever since he's come back, doing a nice job, giving you about 8 boards, 17 points per contest, and Josh Hubbard is able to give you 15.5 points per game. And for Mississippi State, a lot of their offense has been generated via second chances. With Mississippi State, they're a top 30 team in all of college basketball with regards to percentage of missed shots that do result in an offensive rebound, and I do think that that's where Kentucky is going to get clobbered in this game. You've got Trey Mitchell who's been able to do a solid job down low, giving you about 7.5 or so rebounds per game for this Kentucky bunch, but do want to see a little bit more out of guys like Ogana Onyesu, who's been a little bit hit or miss all season long. When he's been out there, he's been able to give you a relatively solid effort. He had that 10-block performance against Ole Miss about a week or two ago, so that was nice. You've got Big Z who's able to pop a few threes, but I do think that Kentucky is going to be bothered by the overall size of Mississippi State. But the one thing that this Kentucky team does, even if the threes aren't falling, they are very efficient with the ball. They're a top 10 team in all of college basketball in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. DJ Wagner has not necessarily panned out to be amazing this season, but he's been a nice steady Eddie guy who's able to give you a little bit of defense. He's been able to dole out the ball a little bit as he's had 4+ assists in 2 out of the team's last 4 games as well. You've got to love what Robert Dillingham has been able to bring to the table with 14 points, shooting north of 45% from 3. And if this is a nip-it-tuck game, Mississippi State, they only shoot about 67% of the free throw line, which is an issue as well. So I do think that you've got a good spot here for Mississippi State to be able to win outright, but I do think that we went a little bit too far with this line. I set my line at 3, and I fully expected to be on Mississippi State in this spot. Now that we've gotten up to 4, I'm going to be taking a look at the points with Kentucky, but right up here, feel like this total is set a bit too high. Set my total 153, going to be looking at the under. 623, 624 on the betting board. It is Georgia, and they are going to be on the road facing off against LSU. LSU, a 3.5 to a 4.5 point favorite with your total 154 to 154.5. Set my line at 5. Going to be willing to lay up to a 4.5 with LSU. LSU has been a little bit of a rough team on the glass this far this season, about 175th in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rate. Georgia is outside the top 240. They just have not been able to get much down low outside of Russell Chaywa, who's been solid. He's a 7-footer that's able to give you about 6.5 rebounds per game, and LSU does not have anyone on the roster that really does give you north of 5.1 rebounds per game, but they do have the most versatile player out there on the floor. That'd be Jordan Wright. He has been Mr. Wright for LSU, supplying 15 points, 5 boards, 2.5 assists, 1.8 steals on a mid-30s 3-point shooting percentage. Absolutely love the way that he's been able to ascend here in conference play, and it's been all the bigger because you've been having Jalen Cook be in and out of the fold all season long. We have not seen him really since Valentine's Day, and he was averaging double figures while he was out there for LSU. Team top scorer, was able to give this team just a little bit more facilitation in general, and ever since he has been out of the fold the last 3 games, LSU has honestly been able to maintain. They've been 3-2 in this stretch. The offense hasn't been great. They have scored fewer than 70 points in 2 out of these 3 games, but defense has been able to bear down, and they go up against a Georgia team that is currently allergic to defense. They have given up at least 75 points in all but 1 out of their last 5 games, and for Georgia, the biggest issue that you do have for this team is giving up those second chances with not having a lot down low. You do have Noah Thomason, Jabri Abdul-Rahim, who have been able to combine for about 25 points per contest. It is a Georgia team that, with regards to a 3-point shooting percentage defense, it's not great, it's not terrible. About 142nd in all of college basketball, nothing too demonstrative home to road, while LSU, they do allow opponents to shoot 34.5% from 3-point range, as clocking in outside the top 200 in all of college basketball, but I just don't know if Georgia necessarily has the efficiency to be able to get the job done on offense in this one, as it's also a Georgia team that they're about 154th in all of college basketball in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. It's a Georgia unit that is going to have a tough time matching up with an LSU team that has been able to do a nice job of being able to generate turnovers as well. LSU, a top 60 team with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis, while Georgia, they turn the ball over about 11.5 times per contest. It's not great, it's not terrible with Silas Semery being able to give you about 10 points, 2.5 assists out there in the backcourt, but Georgia continuing to shoot only about 34.5% from 3-point range outside of your main 2 in Tomlinson and Abdul-Rahim. You really don't have much in terms of guys that are able to shoot north of 33% from 3-point range. I think that LSU utilizes that to their advantage. I did set LSU as a 5-point favorite, going to be willing to lay the number, and did set my total 153. Ever since Cook has been out of the fold, LSU has been playing a little bit of a slower style. So looking at the under, and I'm going to be willing to lay it with LSU, 625, 626 on the betting board. Akron, and they're facing off against Ohio. This is a classic pick'em game, and your total's between 144 and 145. I set Akron as a 1.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to take them on this pick'em line For Ohio, this bunch has been able to do a little bit of a better job on defense recently, though it's been all over the place all season long. And the biggest issue that you do have with this Ohio team, they just don't have anyone down low to make you feel secure on the glass. They've got A.J. Clayton right now leading the way with about 4.6 rebounds per game, and Enrique Freeman is going to eat his lunch. For Enrique Freeman, he leads all of college basketball with 13 rebounds per contest, throws in there 18.5 points while shooting 38% from three-point range in Akron. On top of that, has Ali. So nice they named him twice. 15.5 points. He's only been able to shoot about 30% from three. When he was at Akron last 2 seasons ago, he was more of a 40% three-point shooter, and yet Akron has been able to do a relatively solid job of being balanced. Akron is a top 75 team with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, not taking too much of a drop-off when they're away from home, and for this Akron offense, they're about 104th in all of college basketball in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, going up against an Ohio team that is in the top 25 nationally with regards to fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. You've got a pair of guys in Sharif Mitchell, coupled with Jalen Hunter, who have both been able to do a nice job, be able to flow the offense. Mitchell gives you about 13 points, 2.5 assists per contest, while Hunter gives you 5 assists, 4.5 boards, 14.5 points, but neither of these guys really shoot it well from three. As a matter of fact, out of your top 4 scorers for Ohio, only one of them shoots north of 32% from three, and that's their top rebounder in A.J. Clayton. So you do have your issues there. You've been able to get some relatively good production out of Elmore James, who's been able to give you 9 points per game, but he too only shoots about 28% from three-point range. I do think that Ohio going to be up against it just a little bit here, even though they do a nice job of being able to protect the ball. They haven't necessarily been able to have the world's greatest shot making. It is an Ohio team that is 60th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, but it's actually scoring fewer points per possession at home rather than in a road/neutral venue. So I did set Akron as the 1.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to take them on this pick'em line, and did set my total 143.5. Akron well outside the top 250 with regards to total possessions per game, so I'm looking under, and I'm looking at Akron. 627, 628 on the betting board. Kent State plays us Buffalo. Buffalo is a 15 to a 15.5 point underdog. Total on this game, it is 146.5. With Buffalo, I did set them as an underdog of 16 points. Not willing to lay much more than 15 to 15.5 like I'm seeing right now, but I'm going to be willing to lay the number. For Buffalo, they just don't have anything going right for them right now. I wish I could put it any other way, but they are well outside the top 250 in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis. They haven't been the world's worst team on the glass, with Cy Chapman supplying 18.5 points, 6.5 boards, and then you've got Janavius Smith, who's right now really the main guy from the outside. He's able to give you 8 points, 8.5 boards. He shoots 38.5% from three, but Buffalo is shooting 41.5% from the floor with 14.2 turnovers per game, and they shoot 26.6% from three-point range. That is a bottom 10 mark in all of college basketball. Buffalo, in terms of their rebound rate, 283rd in the country as well. So the one forte that they've had has really been drying up, going up against Kent State team that does have Chris Payton, who's been able to do a nice job down low. He's been able to supply the team with about 8 rebounds per game. It is a Kent State unit that just is not the same defensively this year as they have been in past years. Kent State outside the top 125 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but you do get the sense that it's coming back to them. They've been able to do a nice job holding up recently, giving up 65 points or fewer in all but one out of their last 6 games. And for that matter, if you want to expand it to 71 points, they've given up 71 points or fewer in now 7 out of their last 9 games. You've been able to have Jalen Sullinger supply 15 points, shoots about 40% from three-point range. You've had Giovanni Santiago have to make a big giant adjustment. He was playing off the ball last season with Sincere Carey being the main point guard for the team. Now he's had to play a little bit more on the ball. He's doling out 4 assists to only about 2 turnovers per game. He's really cut down on the turnovers. The three-point shooting numbers, they're starting to rebound as well, only shooting about 32.5% from three, but much better than what it was a few weeks ago. I do think that Kent State is going to be able to put on a masterclass against Buffalo, much like they did the first time around. First game of the month that Kent State played, they absolutely took it to Buffalo, 83-52, a game where they shot 14 of 24 from three-point range. I don't think it's going to be quite that demonstrative, but Buffalo, they have been well outside the top 250 with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage. Couple of that with a injury to Anquan Bolden Jr. out there in the backcourt, I do think that this is doomsday for Buffalo. I did set my total 144, like I said. Do think that the three-point numbers do dry up a little bit, so looking at the under, and I'm going to be willing to lay with Kent State, 629, 630 on the betting board. Houston plays us to Cincinnati. Yes, we are into Cincinnati, who's on to being a 13.5 point underdog. Total on this game between 132 and 133. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Cincinnati. I did make them an underdog of 12 points. Houston, without a question, has been a bulldozer in college basketball this season, but Houston has been getting these lofty lines, and they've been more around 500 against the spread as a result, and you've got a Cincinnati team that is actually the better rebound rate team in this one. Cincinnati, a top 10 team in the country with regards to rebound rate. You've got Aziz Bendango do a nice job down low, being able to supply the team with about 8 boards, was the WAC Defensive Player of the Year last season. He's been able to give you about a block and a half per contest, like what I'm seeing out of Victor Lakeen. He's got all sorts of versatility, not too much of a scorer, and that's really the big thing for Cincinnati. The backcourt play, that is going to be no comparison. Jamal Shedd is one of the most versatile and just complete players in all of college basketball. He, for Houston, is able to give you about 6 assists, 13.5 points, shoots from three-point range about 34.5% from distance, and is a ringleader of one of the most efficient offenses in all of college basketball. We always talk about the Houston defense, which is number 1 in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but offensively they're in the top 25 in terms of points scored per possession. You just don't realize it too much because they're well outside the top 320 with regards to total possessions per game, though I do think that for Cincinnati, guy that's going to be able to keep them in it, Dan Skillings Jr. is their top scorer with about 12 points, 6 boards. Doesn't shoot it amazing from three-point range, but he's been relatively solid in terms of being just very well-rounded, being very versatile. Simius Lucasius, he's saying 6'6" or so. He's able to shoot 36% from 3 assists, 10 points per contest. Cincinnati's doing a good job as a collective of just being able to get things rolling in general. Now, offense has some limitations with them turning the ball over about 12.5 times per contest. Would like to see Jizzle James be able to take a few strides forward at the guard spot, but I do think that with Cincinnati being able to hit the glass, I think that they're going to be able to match up with guys like Jawan Roberts and company. That's going to allow them to be able to remain lively in a game that I think is going to be a bit of a low-scoring slog. These two teams, as a matter of fact, hooked up a few weeks ago. That was a 67-62 game, in which both teams had a tough time being able to get it going from three-point range. They shot a combined 9 of 36 from three-point range, but I see something very similar here. Houston has been tremendous at being able to guard the three-point line. Cincinnati, they're allowing opponents to shoot about 32.8% from distance as well. Even though LJ Cryer is going to be the best scorer in this game, I think Cincinnati holds in there. I set my line at 12, going to be willing to take the points with the Bearcats, and also made my total 130, so also diving in on the under. 631, 632 on the betting board. Clemson plays host to Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh is a 7.5 to an 8-point underdog. Your total on this game, it is 142, made my line 6.5, so I'm going to be willing to take the 7.5 to 8 here with Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh has done a really good job defensively, a top 45 team in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and for Pittsburgh, what is so big for them, Carlton Carrington and what he's been able to bring to the table. In his first career college basketball game, he had a triple-double, and he's been able to do it all for the team with about 10 points, 5 boards, 4 assists, just all sorts of versatility for a Pittsburgh team that is 15th in all of college basketball in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. Now, after a very odd start to the season, Clemson, they're now shooting as collective less than 36% from three-point range. So you still have Joe Girard giving you double figures, shooting north of 40% from three-point range. But I do think that where this battle is going to be one/loss is going to be on the glass. And Pittsburgh is a team that's 37th in all of college basketball with regards to their rebound rate. You bring in someone like a Zach Allison, who was playing over in the Big South last season, and he had 5+ blocks a game or two ago. He's been able to step up very big. Frederico, so nice they named him twice. He's been able to give the team right around 5 boards, a block and a half per contest. Meanwhile, you've got a Clemson team that also does a really good job on the glass. We always focus on the three-point shooting and the offense of them, but number 53 in the country with regards to rebound rate, because you've got PJ Hall, who's got all sorts of great versatility, throwing in there about 18.5 points, 7 boards, shoots only about 33% from 3, but all in all has been solid. Meanwhile, you've also been able to have Ian Shefflin down low, give you 9.5 points, 9.5 boards. If you remember Eli Hershkovich, who joined the show a few days ago, he also highlighted this man, Jack Clark, who was dealing with an injury towards the beginning part of the season, and he's now been able to give the team 5+ rebounds in each of the last 5 games, and that has been leading to Clemson playing a little bit better on the defensive side of things. I'm not saying the team has been amazing by any stretch of the imagination, but it is a bunch now that has given up 68 points or fewer in all but 2 of their games. Thus far this month, it is a Pittsburgh team that comes in, having given up 64 or fewer in 4 of their last 5 games, but it is also a Pittsburgh team that's gone to at least 74 points in 3 out of their last 4 games, and this is a Clemson team that is in the top 30 nationally with regards to points scored on a per possession basis, and you do have Blake Hinson on the side of Pittsburgh, supplying 19 points, shooting darn near 40% from three-point range. So good old situation of something he's got to give. I did set my total at a 142.5. At 142, it's a maximum willing to take over, but I'm going to be willing to take it over. Out with Clemson, made them a 6.5 point favorite, so I'm going to be willing to take the 7.5 to 8 here with Pittsburgh. 633, 634 on the betting board. Syracuse plays those to Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech is an underdog of 1 point to 1.5 points. Totals between 154 to 154.5, and with Syracuse, I did set them as a favorite of 2 points. Not willing to go any further than the 1 to 1.5, but going to be willing to lay it. It is a Syracuse unit that is ranking right now in the top 50 nationally in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, and Sean Badula has been one of the national leaders in turnovers. 3.4 turnovers while being able to give the team 15.5 points, 4.5 boards, 4.5 assists. Now, a lot of the turnovers are a byproduct of just him having the ball in his hand so much, and all in all, it's not like this Virginia Tech team is just creating turnovers like it's Sara Lee's Bakery. It's about 11.3 turnovers per contest, but still a little bit of a concern. Now, what is concerning for Syracuse, their battle on the glass, as Syracuse is outside the top 175 with regards to rebound rate, going up against a Virginia Tech team that they do have the edge down low. They're about 178th in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rate, but outside of Lynn Kidd, you don't have a ton. Lynn Kidd, 13 points, 6.5 rebounds per game. You have only got one other guy that gives you north of 4.5 rebounds per game, and that would be Mekhi Long, and he has not played since January. So, that's not great. Meanwhile, for Syracuse, you've got a pair of guys in the backcourt in Judah Mintz, J.J. Sarlin, who have been very good, and both bring something different to the table. Mintz, 2 steals, 4.5 assists, 18.5 points per contest. Sarlin has been more of an off-the-ball scorer, shooting 32% from 3, 14 points per game. Now, for Syracuse, they do need to shoot it better from 3-point range. They're only shooting about 33% from the outside end. Syracuse is prone to giving it up a little bit from beyond the arc as well. 252nd in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, while Virginia Tech, they're about 190th with this regard. Both of these teams have very similar just turnover numbers in general. They're both turning the ball over about 11.5 times per contest. I do, though, think that Charlie Bell, what he's able to provide the Syracuse team with shooting north of 40% from 3, 12 points per contest, along with having just the overall versatility of someone like a Malik Brown, who's able to give you about 5.5 rebounds per game. That's been paramount in them, moving past the fact that they have not had Benny Williams around much of the season, and I do think that Syracuse gets it done in a game that has cranked up tempo. Syracuse in the top 60 with regards to total possessions per game, but I think we went a little bit too high with regards to the total. Virginia Tech, typically a rather slow and controlled team, and I just don't think that you get enough possessions for and over in this ordeal, and it's a Syracuse team that they themselves have had ups and downs with regards to both their offense and their defense, having scored fewer than 70 points in 2 out of their last 5 games. So, going to be taking a look at the under, set by total 150, and with Syracuse, want to lay up to 1.5 with them. 635, 636 on the betting board. Northern Iowa plays itself Valparaiso. Valparaiso is an underdog of 15.5 points. So, on this game is 147.5. Seth Valpo as an underdog of 13.5 points. So I'm going to be willing to take the points with Valparaiso. It has been a unit that has been rough all season long outside the top 275 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, while outside the top 250 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. But they do have a very nice go-to scorer in Isaiah Stafford. 17 points, 2 assists, shoots only about 30% from 3, but is able to generate about a steal and a half per contest. Very crafty with the way that he just finds ways to be able to affect the game. Meanwhile, for this Valparaiso team, though they are outside the top 250 with regards to rebound rate, it's not as if this Northern Iowa team necessarily has that one guy that's going to completely dominate the game. Now, Northern Iowa, despite the fact that you've got Titan Anderson being the only guy that really gives you north of 5.5 rebounds per game, this team, in terms of their rebound rate, they have been one of the better mid-major teams out there in all of college basketball, as they're clocking in about 167th, but for Valparaiso, it does feel like they've found their main point guard in Darius DiViero that is going to be able to give this team just a little bit more direction moving forward. He's been able to give out about 4.5 assists to 2.5 turnovers per game, and they do go up against a Northern Iowa team that they've got a lot of leakiness with regards to their perimeter defense. For Northern Iowa, they are allowing opponents to shoot from 3-point range, about 34.9%. That is 254th in all of college basketball. Valparaiso has their own warts with this regard. They are 316th in the country, but it actually drops to about 34.3% when they're away from home. And Bowen Bourne, for lack of a better term, is just a chucker for Northern Iowa. He's been able to give the team about 13, 14 points per contest, but it's not very efficient, the shots that he's taking. He's shooting about 38.5% from the floor, 32% from three-point shots. Tremendous at the free throw line, but that's been a little bit of an issue for the team. Nathan Izey has been able to give you about 14 points, 6.5 rebounds per game. I do think that Northern Iowa should be able to win this game, and I think that they should be able to win this game rather handily. First time around, it was 86-67 with Northern Iowa getting it done, but Northern Iowa in that game shot 66.7% from the floor. Again, this Valparaiso defense stinks. I don't think that they're going to allow Northern Iowa to knock down 2/3 of their shots once again. So I did box this total down a little bit more. I set my total 145.5. I'm looking at the under, and I do think that the decrease in efficiency allows Valparaiso to be able to give a little bit more of a competitive contest. Set my line at 13.5. Going to be taking a look at the points and the under. 637, 638 on the betting board. Texas State plays also Louisiana Monroe. Monroe is an underdog of 5 points with your total 134 to 134.5. Did set my line at 6.5. I'm going to be willing to lay with Texas State. Texas State has been a pretty solid defense this year, top 160 team with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, and a team that has been a top 175 team in terms of rebound rate. Now, Louisiana Monroe, they themselves are pretty similar with regards to their rebound rate, and for Louisiana Monroe, all of a sudden they've been able to unearth just a little bit of offense, which we haven't seen much of it this season from them. They are well outside the top 250 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, but you've been able to get a lot out of Tyreek LaCour recently. LaCour gives you about 10.5 points per contest, shoots in the mid-30s from three-point range for a Monroe team that as a whole, they're still shooting well below 33% from three-point range, but it's been very nice to see a nice heartbeat out of this team. Meanwhile, they do go up against a Texas State team that they've been able to get a little bit more out of Colton Benson. The transfer from Army has been able to provide this team a little bit of an outside presence, shooting 41.5% from three with 8 points per contest, while your main scorer, Jordan Mason, has been able to do a nice job, 12.5 points, doesn't necessarily pop it well from three-point range, but what does have you a little bit concerned about this Louisiana Monroe unit is that while they do a relatively solid job down low from the perimeter, they have been ghastly, 260th in all of college basketball in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, going up against the Texas State team that has done a nice job of really being able to guard the arc. They are number 66 in all of college basketball in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. Now for Texas State, key is they've got to take care of the ball. North of 13 turnovers per contest. They're a bottom 50 team in all of college basketball with regards to turnovers on a per possession basis on offense, but got a Louisiana Monroe team that is also turning the ball over 13 times per game. They shoot 30% from three-point range. They've been able to get much more recently out of Tyrese Watson, who is supplying 9 points per contest overall for the season. Only shoots about 26% from three-point range, but concerning that he only played 8 minutes in the team's last game against Troy because he was really getting on a nice burner run. He had scored at least 7 points in out of the team's last 7 games, 6 of them, so him potentially being out of the fold is something that you do want to watch. Nika, I cannot pronounce his last name. It's like 15 letters long. He's been able to do a solid job being able to give you about 6 rebounds per game, but he's really the only guy on the roster other than Mr. Jalen Bolden who's been able to give you about 6 boards per contest to give you north of 4.2 rebounds per game, and I do think that Texas State is going to be able to win from within. I do think that a Louisiana Monroe team that, once again, they have really been able to heat up with their offense. They've been able to get past the 68-point plateau in all but 3 of their last 10 games. They're going to cool down in this one. I did set my total at a 134.5. I do think that this is going to be a game that is going to be close enough for late game felling. The opener was 135, so now that we're down to 134, that is my max buy point on the over, but it is my buy point on the over. And with regards to the spread, I did set Texas State as a 6.5 point favorite, so going to be willing to lay the 5. 639, 640 on the betting board. It is BYU on the road facing off against Kansas. Kansas is a 6.5 to a 7 point favorite with your total 153. I did set my total at 148.5. It's a circumstance where I'm going to be looking at the under for Kansas. The team has been able to do a much better job of being able to guard rather than score. Kansas is outside the top 80 nationally in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, so they are averaging north of 15 points more per 100 possessions at home rather than in a roadside neutral court venue, but it is also a Kansas unit that has really been able to bat down the hatches with regards to their defense. I do think that Hunter Dickinson, being a double-double machine with 17 plus points, 7 plus boards, is really going to affect a BYU team that, while they've been very good in so many respects, BYU top 50 team in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis, one of the better rebound rate teams in all of college basketball as well. They just aren't the same when they're away from home, as they have been giving up about 14.1 points more per 100 possessions away from home rather than when they are at home. And this has been a Kansas unit that, while they are relatively mediocre at being able to guard the three-point line, they're 29th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, going up against a BYU team that has been actually really good with their perimeter defense, allowing opponents to shoot 30.8% from three-point range. But as we know with this Kansas team, they are very reliant upon Kevin McCullough, who's been able to do a little bit of everything for this team. He's able to supply 5+ rebounds per game. He's been able to give you north of 20 points per contest, shooting it well from three-point range, as it's a Kansas team that really doesn't have a lot of depth. They've been able to get nice production out of DeJuan Harris, who's been able to give you 6.5 assists to 2.1 turnovers per game, but he just flat out doesn't give you a lot of scoring. KJ Adams has been able to give you about 12.5 points per game, and Johnny Furphy has been able to pick it up with him, shooting about 40% from three-point range, but they so badly need Kevin McCullough, not just to play in this game, but they do need him to be effective in this game as well, and he hasn't played in the last week plus, so that does leave a little bit of trepidation there. I sort of think that he goes in this one, but I think that he goes at much less than 100%, and that's a little bit of a TBD. Meanwhile, Jackson Robinson, he's been able to provide for BYU right around about 14 points per contest, shoots in the mid-30s from three-point range, but even the potential of McCullough being out of the fold, it does leave some trepidation with BYU, with them being away from home, as they've been a completely different unit. And for BYU, this has been a defense that is being torched recently. 70-plus points surrendered in each of their last 4 games. Meanwhile, you've got a Kansas unit that has been having an almighty struggle in terms of being able to just put the ball in the basket. They were able to erupt against Texas over the weekend, but in terms of regulation and regulation only, 70 points or fewer in 4 of their last 5 games. So I did set my total 148.5, looking at the under. Like I said, I think Kevin McCullough goes, but I think that he's far less than 100%, so I've already pretty much attributed pretty much half of what I would deduct from Kansas if he weren't to go. So I did set my line at 6.5. Here at a 7, it would be my buy point on BYU to go along with this total under 641, 642 on the betting board. You've got SIU Edwardsville on the road facing off against Eastern Illinois, and Eastern Illinois does find themselves as a home underdog of 1.5 points. So on this game between 140 and 140.5. I did set my total 134.5, looking at the under. Got a pair of teams here that are well outside the top 200 with regards to total possessions per game. For SIU Edwardsville, too, they were really bad out of conference with regards to their overall defense. They've been able to pick it up a little bit more recently, and last season they were one of your better mid-major defenses in all of college basketball, and despite the fact that they don't have a lot of size, they should be able to control this game with DeMarco Minor, a guy that stands only 6 feet tall, giving you 15 points, 8 boards. Doesn't shoot it amazing from 3, but it is an SIU Edwardsville team that has been able to get some offense going with the fact that they only turn the ball over 10.5 times per contest. And as a team, shoot 34% from 3 with Shamar and Lamar Wright combined, shoot about 34% from the outside. Shamar gives you 14 points, 4 boards. These are Lorenzo Wright's sons, by the way. And Lamar, he's been able to give you about 10 points per contest, throws in there a steal per game. And when it comes to this Eastern Illinois team, they've been dealing with an injury to their main rebounder. It's Cooper Jacoby. He's been nice down low. He's been able to give you 10.5 points, 7.5 rebounds per game. Problem is, it's not played since mid-January, and that leaves the team without anyone that gives you north of 4.5 rebounds per game for an Eastern Illinois team that's well outside the top 250 with regards to their rebound rate. The one thing Eastern Illinois has been able to do, generate turnovers. They're a top 80 team in the country with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis, but they are ghastly with their three-point shooting defense. 336th in all of college basketball in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. Not like this SIU Edwardsville team has been much better at 331st, and that expands to about 39.4% in a roadside shoot court venue, but you're staring at an Eastern Illinois team that, of their top 3 scorers, none of them shoot above 31% from three-point range. You've had Tiger Booker be very good for the team, 15.5 points, 2 steals per contest, and the transfer that comes in from LIU and Kendall Davis, I like what he's been able to bring to the table, about 10.5 points per contest, and down the stretch here has been a very, very good contributor. He's put in their double figures in each of the team's last 6 games, 9+ rebounds in 5 out of the last 6 games as well. He's really coming along for the ride, and I did have to shade up Eastern Illinois with the way that he has been playing recently, but it's a very top-heavy team. Dan Lewis is able to give you about 6 points, shoots in the mid-30s from three-point range, but for Eastern Illinois, despite the fact that they've done such a good job with the turnover battle, they don't have anything down low. They are a bunch that they really give it up from three-point range. They go up against an SIU Edwardsville team that has gone to at least 70 points in each of their last 4 games. Meanwhile, for Eastern Illinois, this team has been just all over the place with regards to their offense. They have scored 72 points or fewer in pretty much all but 4 out of their last 13 games. I do think that this is going to be a lower scoring slog involving 2 teams well outside the top 230 with regards to total possessions per game. Set my line at a 2.5. I'm going to be willing to lay with SIU Edwardsville and made my total 134.5. Also looking under 643, 644 on the betting board. Air Force is going to be playing us to Boise State, and Boise State is a 9 to a 9.5 point favorite. And total on this game, you're going to be getting it between 135 to 135.5. And I did set Air Force as an underdog of 9 points. 9.5 is my minimum buy point with them. With this Air Force unit, I mean, they go on the road and they knock off New Mexico after they got lambasted by 29 at home against UNLV days earlier. And it makes no sense, but Air Force is actually giving up fewer points per possession when they're on the road rather than at home. And their offense has been more efficient. Like, Air Force is supposed to have this really good home court advantage, and they play better on the road this season. Like, I do not get it whatsoever, but that said, you've got a trio of guys for this Air Force team: Ryan Petraeus, Evan Taylor, Bo Becker. They've all been able to give you between 14.5 and 15 points per contest. You've got 4 to 5.8 rebounds per game out of all three of these guys. Petratus along Taylor combined for about 6.5 assists per game, and all three guys shoot at least 36.7% from three. You've got really nothing outside of these guys. You've been able to get a little bit of something down low out of Kellen Boylan, who's been able to give you about 5.5 rebounds per game, but that is about it. Air Force, well outside the top two arm with regards to rebound rate. Boise State should be able to plow down low with having Dyson Dagenhart along with Chibizo Ogbu, along with also throwing their Omar Stanley, combining for about 16 rebounds per game. Ogbu has been able to shoot 42% from three-point range for a Boise State team that is starting to pick it up on offense. They're now a top 65 team in all of college basketball in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Here's the issue, though. All of their success is coming at home. They are averaging 14.6 points fewer per 100 possessions in a road/neutral venue rather than at home. And for Air Force, they're averaging 5 points more per 100 possessions away from home rather than when they are at home. It is a Boise State team, though, that they've been able to do a nice job of being able to guard the arc all season long. For Boise State, this is a top 60 team with regards to opponent's three-point shooting percentage, going up against an Air Force unit that certainly has had their issues in terms of guarding the three all season long. They're allowing opponents to shoot 38.3% from three-point range. That is not good, to say the least. And for Boise State, I do think that they're going to be able to do a relatively solid job down low, but you really don't have a lot of facilitation on this team. Right now, their main player in assists per game, that'd be Cam Martin. He's been able to give you about 2.5 assists per contest. Meanwhile, with Air Force having that big three, I do think that's going to be just enough for them to be able to hold in there against the Boise State team that has now given up 72 or fewer in each of their last 3 games. And for Air Force, it has been a case where they have scored 66 points or fewer in 4 of their last 5 games. So I do think that things are going to be bogged down a little bit from a scoring perspective, especially with Air Force being outside the top 275 with regards to total possessions per game. They might total 133, diving in on the under. And with Air Force, we'll take anything north of 9 with them. 645, 646 on the betting board. Iowa plays host to Penn State. Penn State is a underdog of 9 points with your total 161 to 162. And for Penn State, I did set them as an underdog of 9 points. This was an opener of 7, and personally, I did take this line a little bit earlier. We were able to get better numbers on Iowa than what is out there right now. So if this does get back to like an 8, 8.5, which I wouldn't be surprised if it does, would be willing to lay it there. It is a Penn State team that, even though they've had success in their first 2 games without Kanye, clearly their top scorer out there in the fold, I do think that they're starting to feel that loss a little bit. They were able to knock off Indiana along with Illinois, but those were home games. Now you have to travel to Carver Hawkeye Arena, where it has just been a case where Iowa has been so dominant in terms of their offense all season long. They have scored 75-plus points in all but 2 of their games at Carver Hawkeye Arena since February of 2022. So that's out of 34 games, I believe, in total. They have scored 75-plus in 32 of them. Got a Penn State unit that has been able to do a nice job of being able to guard the three-point line. To their credit, they're a top 40 team in terms of opponent's three-point shooting percentage. They've been able to do a nice job of being able to get turnovers. They just get plowed on the glass, so they're outside the top 320 with regards to rebound rate. You've got Qudus Wahab, who's been able to do a nice job of being able to supply the team with about 8.5 rebounds per game. He's really the only guy on the roster that gives you north of 5 rebounds per game. Meanwhile, for Iowa, they're not amazing on the glass, but they're about 206. That's going to be able to win the battle, and you've got Owen Freeman, who's really been able to do a nice job coming on strong for the team. 1.8 blocks, 6.5 boards, 11 points per game, and then got that trio of Tony Perkins, Peyton Sanford, Ben Krikke, who have all been able to supply between the 3 of them about 45 points per contest. And it is an Iowa team that it's not like they've been amazing from three-point range all season long, shooting 33.5% from 3 now. They are averaging north of 12 points more per 100 possessions at home rather than in a roadside shoot-required venue, but they do now have to face off against a Penn State team that they shoot about 33% from three-point range. Iowa is outside the top 180 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, but they are giving up more than 14 points fewer per 100 possessions at home rather than in a roadside shoot-required venue. And with Penn State, it's not all about what you're able to get out of those VCU transfers. And Nick Kern along with Ace Baldwin. Baldwin, 5.5 assists, shoots 34% for 3, 14 points per contest, while Nick Kern is able to supply you with about 9 points, 4 boards. Doesn't shoot it well from 3-point range, but in the 2 games since Cleary has moved on, it combined 33 points and 9 rebounds. So very interesting scenario here. I did set my total at a 167. I'm going to be looking at the over. Iowa just plays harebrained games when they're at home, and I do think that this Iowa team is going to be threatening 90 once again. We've been seeing that from them all season long, but I do think the Penn State is going to be able to step up, guard a few threes, be able to turn defense into offense with some of their turnovers as well, despite the fact that Iowa is a top 20 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. So going to be looking at the over. And with Iowa, like I said, I bet the opener on this one, semi-line to 9, so at an 8.5 or less, willing to lay it with them. 647, 648 on the main board. Arkansas plays host to Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt is an underdog of 10 points, and your total on this game, it is 144.5. It has been a horrible year for Vanderbilt. I can't lay 10 with Arkansas, though, either. I set my line at 9.5. Double figures was my buy point on Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt is well outside the top 250 in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis. There is not a lot to love about the team except for the fact that Ezra Manjon has been relatively solid with the ball. He gives you about 3.5 assists and 2 turnovers per contest. Throws in there about 14 points per game. Now, 3-point shooting wise, he's only shooting about 30% from 3, and Vanderbilt just across the board, they have not been able to shoot it from 3. They shoot about 28.6% from the outside. Van Allen Lubin has been able to give you about 11.6 boards. He shoots 32.5% from 3, and really, other than Tazos Camateros, who's been able to shoot about 35.5% from distance, nobody on the roster shoots above 35% from 3, and that's a good way of being able to attack this Arkansas team. Arkansas, they don't have a lot down low either because Trevon Brazil is currently out of the fold, so they don't have a single guy in the roster that's giving you north of 5.5 rebounds per game, but Arkansas, in terms of opponent's 3-point shooting percentage, 223rd in all of college basketball. Vanderbilt, meanwhile, they've somehow been even worse. Vanderbilt currently clocking in 355th in terms of opponent's 3-point shooting percentage, so Arkansas should be able to get some good looks for Tremont Mark along K-Leaf Battle. Battle has been able to give you about 12 points. He's shooting 37.5% from 3. Mark shoots 39% from 3 with 17 points per game, but Arkansas has been janky on offense all season long because they don't have a facilitator. At the very least for Vanderbilt, you've got Manjon, who you know is going to be bringing up the ball. Devo Davis and his 2.2 assists per game right now leading the way. Kenan Menefield, ever since he's been in the fold, he hasn't given Arkansas too much, and now he went out with an injury about a Saturday or two ago in that game against Mississippi State, so they're dealing with that. Trevon Brazil has been in and out of the fold all season long, just returned in that game against Missouri, but he only played 4 minutes, so I don't think that if he does play, he's going to give you too much of anything here. And for Vanderbilt, as strange as it is to say, it feels like they've got a little bit of an edge down low because you do have Tyron Lawrence, who's able to give you 13 points, 5 rebounds per game. If you look at overall rebound rate for the season, Arkansas, they're the better team, but I mean, both of these teams, they've got all sorts of issues. Vanderbilt does a little bit of a better job of being able to protect the ball. Now, for Vanderbilt, they've also scored 64 points or fewer in 4 of their last 5 games. We'll give it up at least 73 in every one of them. But for Arkansas, they've given up at least 70 points in each of their last 5 games. Offense has gotten going with at least 78 points in 3 of their last 5. But I do think that for Vanderbilt, they're going to be able to hold in there. I do think that Vanderbilt is going to be able to do a little bit of a better job of being able to guard the arc because they know exactly what's coming with this Arkansas team that has no point guard. I set my line at 9.5, so at the 10, I'm going to be willing to take the points with Vanderbilt, and did set my total 143.5. Also looking at the under 649, 650 on the betting board. Texas Tech plays host at Texas. Texas is back to being an underdog of 4 to 4.5 points. Totals between 144.5 to 145. Made Texas Tech a favorite of 5.5 points. I'm going to be one to lay. I thought that Texas Tech was going to be much more of a defensive-oriented team, but it's actually been the offense that's been able to carry the day for Texas Tech. Texas Tech, a top 35 team in terms of points scored on a per-possession basis. Meanwhile, the defensive efficiency has not been their forte, 113th of the country in terms of points allowed on a per-possession basis, but they're actually giving up 19.1 points fewer per 100 possessions at home rather than in a roadside shooting court venue. Meanwhile, you've got a Texas team that is giving up 12.9 points more per 100 possessions when they leave home. You've got a Texas unit that has been able to do an okay job down low recently, with Dylan Mitchell along Dylan DeSue being able to combine for about 13 to 13.5 rebounds per game. It is a Texas team that overall, with regards to rebound rate, is about 137th in the country with this regard. And Texas Tech, they're right on par. They're about 145th. Warren Washington and Darion Williams, though, I do like this duo for Texas Tech. Washington, a true 7-footer that's able to give you about 7.5 boards, 10 points per contest. Meanwhile, Williams, he's just a do-it-all sort of guy. Comes in from Nevada, 11 points, 7.5 boards, 2.5 assists, shoots 43.5% from 3-pointers, while Texas Tech, they only turn the ball over about 10.9 times per contest. They also are very good late in games at the free throw line. Each of your top 4 scorers are going to be active in this game because Evan Cambridge is right now dealing with an injury. Shoot at least 83.6% of the free throw line. So if you're looking for a nice edge, you'll be able to get a cover on a tight line. There it is for you. And you've also been able to get about 10 points and some very good 3-point shooting out of Chance McMillan, who's been able to shoot about 39% from the outside. It is a Texas Tech unit that I think is going to be able to continue to be very efficient on offense, and this defense just gets a big, giant breath of life when they're at home, going against a Texas squad that has been all over the place recently with regards to their offense, as this bunch has failed to get past the 70-point plateau in 4 of their last 5 games. So, circumstance where I'm going to be willing to lay with Texas Tech, made them a favorite of 5.5 points, and Did semi-total 145.5. Texas Tech, I do think it's going to be allowing a few shots from the outside in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, and allowing teams to knock down 33.1% of their threes, so it does lower to about 29.6% from at home, but you would still have Max Haysmith, who's been able to give you 15-plus points per contest, shoots just below 40% from three. Brock Cunningham has been relatively solid on the offensive side of things for Texas as well, but also have a Texas team that allows opponents to shoot 39.4% from distance in a road/shooter venue. So here at 144.5, looking at the over semi-total 145.5, and one to lay up to 5 with Texas. 651, 652 on the betting board. Florida State plays us NC State. NC State is a 2 to a 3-point underdog with your total 150 to 151, and I did set this total at a 152. I'm going to be looking at the over. Florida State, a top 75 team in terms of total possessions per game, and Florida State is having an almighty struggle being able to guard the 3-point line at home. They're 266th overall in opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, and they allow opponents to shoot 31.1% from distance away from them, 37.8% at home. That's a big giant issue going up against an NC State team that they also have had a tough time being able to guard the 3-point line. Opponents away from home against them are shooting 37.4% from distance. I will say Primo Spears just has not really panned out for this Florida State team. He's able to give you about 10 points per contest, but for lack of a better term, he's a chucker. He shoots well less than 33% from 3-point range, really doesn't make very efficient plays in general. I do like what they've been able to get, though, out of Jameer Watkins, who's been able to give you about 15 points, 6 boards per contest. These are two teams that really struggle on the glass, as you've got Mohamed Diarra for NC State, who's been able to give you 6.3 rebounds per game, but he's really the only guy in the roster that is able to give you north of 5 boards per contest. NC State, with regards to their rebound rate, they're about 234th in all of college basketball, so Florida State has a very, very slim disadvantage here at 280th. Typically, they're just absolutely bombarded and bombed on the glass, but here they're actually able to play even up. You've been able to have Darren Green Jr. as well, be able to shoot about 37.5% from 3-point range. He's throwing in there about 11.5 points per contest. He has been a little bit spotty in terms of being able to give you anything other than 3-point shooting, but you know the 3-point shooting numbers are there, and for Florida State, this has been one of the better teams at being able to rip away the ball in all of college basketball, top 45 team with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis, going up against an NC State team that has been turning the ball over only about 9.4 times per contest, other than DJ Horn, who's able to shoot 43% for 3 with 17.5 points per contest. who really don't have anyone else that consistently pops threes that shoots above 32% from distance. But I do think that for NC State, they're going to be able to remain lively, because I do think that in the battle of strength on strength, NC State is going to be able to do a relatively solid job of being able to take care of the ball. I do think that in the end, Florida State on their own floor deserves to have a little bit of an edge, so I did set them as a 2-point favorite, but here at 2.5 to 3, going to be willing to take the points with NC State. I did set my total 152 with the way that both teams had a rough time being able to guard the arc, and with the way that Florida State plays very up-tempo. So looking at the over, and I'm going to be willing to take the points with NC State. 653, 654 on the betting board. Notre Dame, they play host to Wake Forest. Wake Forest is a road favorite of 6 to 6.5 points, totals between 134.5 and 135. Notre Dame just has an innate ability to really stick teams in the mud and make things slow and grimy. Now, I did set Wake Forest as a 7-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the 6 to 6.5 here, but I do think that things get very much slowed down, and we've seen Wake Forest get involved in slogs. The game that they played against Virginia about a week or so ago, neither team was able to get to 60 points in that one. I do think that both teams are going to be able to get to 60 in this one, but I don't think it's going to be much more than that for Notre Dame. A Notre Dame unit that is well outside the top 200 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, but Notre Dame has done a nice job of being able to lock teams down from 3-point range. Notre Dame, they allow you to shoot about 32.7% from 3-point range at home. And Wake Forest, to their credit, they are a really good perimeter defense as well. Wake Forest, 63rd in the country with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. That falls to about 31.3% in a roadside venue. And for Wake Forest, it's not the world's worst thing that they're slowed down in this game, because Wake Forest has a very thin sort of rotation themselves. They've had Damari Monsanto be out of the fold for darn near the entirety of the season. They've gotten a little bit out of him, but he's sort of been in and out all season long. You've got two main rebounders in Efton Reed along with Austin Carr, who will be able to give you about 14.5 rebounds per game. Carr has been able to give you about 13.5 points per contest, shooting 37% from 3-point range. Well, Kevin Boopy Miller, Hunter Salas. These two guys, they've been able to combine for about 34 points per game, and Salas shoots 43.5% from three-point range for a Wake Forest team that they only turn the ball over about 11 times per contest, going against a Notre Dame team that is their big kryptonite. They turn the ball over north of 13 times per contest. Marcus Burton, among power conference players, is 3.8 turnovers per game. That is the most of any individual in all of college basketball, and it is a Notre Dame team that they're going to be looking to be scrappy on the glass to be able to maintain in this one, as Burton has been able to give you about 3.5 rebounds per game. But you take a look past that, you've got out of your top 7 scorers, 5 different guys that give you at least 4.2 rebounds per game. J.R. Kozinski has been able to give you about 5 rebounds per game, and they have gotten a little bit more scoring recently with Brendan Shrewsbury, the coach's son, stepping up with about 10 points per game, shooting 38.5% from distance, and his last few games have been his best few games. He's gone to at least 12 points in 4 out of the last 5 games, and he's gone to double figures in general in all but 2 out of the team's last 10. So I've been very impressed there. It is a Wake Forest team that I do think that with having Carr and company down low, they're going to be able to do a little bit better job down low. Wake Forest about 102nd in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rate. Meanwhile, this is a Notre Dame team that is clocking in more in the neighborhood of about 72nd, but they don't necessarily have those dominant rebounders. But I do think that Notre Dame, with them being well outside the top 3 with regards to total possessions per game, and Wake Forest just showing all season long that they're willing to oblige with a little bit of a slower tempo, and Wake Forest seeing a drop-off of about 18.6 points fewer per 100 possessions away from home rather than at home. I think that this game gets slowed down. Did set my line at 7. I do think that in the end, Wake Forest gets the job done. I'm going to be willing to lay the number, but did set my total 133. Also looking under 655, 656 on the betting board. Wyoming plays us UNLV, and UNLV is a favorite on the road of 5 to 5.5 points. So on this game is 143.5 with UNLV, meaning them a 4.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to take the 5+ here with Wyoming. It's been very strange with Wyoming. They see a big bump with regards to their offense at home. They're scoring more than 12 points more per 100 possessions at home rather than in a roadside-shoot-to-court venue, but Wyoming has really given it up when they've been at home. Wyoming is giving up 3.8 points more per 100 possessions at home rather than in a roadside shoot-to-court venue, and UNLV has honestly traveled really well this season. We've seen UNLV already get a win at the Pit. We saw them go on the road against Boise St, be able to get the job done there, and for UNLV, this defense has been getting better and better as the weeks go along. UNLV is about 198th in all of college basketball with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, but they're only giving up 1 more point per 100 possessions when they're at home rather than in a roadside shoot-to-court venue. And for Adrian Thomas, he's been really good at the point guard spot, giving you 6+ assists per contest. He's able to throw in there about 12.5 points per contest. It is a Wyoming team that certainly is going to allow for a lot of open looks from three-point range. They allow opponents to shoot 37.7% from three-point range at home. Meanwhile, it's a UNLV team that they allow you to shoot 31.2% from three-point range in a roadside shoot-to-court venue, but I do like the big 2 that this Wyoming team is able to bring to the table. Now, Wyoming, they do need to cut down on the turnovers. In terms of turnovers on a per-possession basis, a bottom 75 team in all of college basketball, but you've got a pair of guys that are able to really bomb it from three-point range, as you've got a cool Cott along Sam Griffin, combining for about 31.5 points per contest between the two of them, about 5.5 assists. Cott shoots 38% from 3. Griffin shoots 39.5% from distance. And one other big thing about this Wyoming team is that this team shoots very well at the free throw line. Their top 4 scorers all shoot at least 79.5% at the charity stripe, going up against a UNLV team that ever since they've gotten the Boone brothers back in the fold, they've been able to do a better job on the glass. They're combining for about 13 rebounds per game, but UNLV is well outside the top 200 with regards to rebound rate. Its Wyoming team has been getting completely decimated on the glass all season long. Cem Michigan has been able to give you about 6.5 rebounds per game, but that's that. You don't have a lot there in terms of overall rebound rate. This is a Wyoming team that is currently checking in right in that neighborhood about 170th, but I do think that with Wyoming, they're going to be able to hold in there in a game where I do think that it's going to be a little bit of a strength-on-strength battle with the three-point shooting of Wyoming against the three-point shooting defense of UNLV, but I do think that Wyoming does just enough to be able to hold in there, especially with UNLV being a little bit shaky on the glass, and this UNLV team being a team that has really done a nice job on defense. They've given up 69 points or fewer in each of their last 4 games, but they also have not gotten past 72 points in each of their last 4. So I do think that you get a lower scoring game set by total at a 140.5. Looking at the under of the UNLV could only make them a 4.5 point favorite. So looking at 5+ here with Wyoming. 657, 658 on the betting board. Fresno State plays us to Utah State. Utah State is a favorite of 11.5 points. Total on this game is 144 to 145. Set Utah State as a 12.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. The opener on this game was 10, so value is starting to dry up, but you still have some here. Without Andre Eduardo 3000, this Fresno Fresno State team has not been the same, as Mr. Andre 3000 has been able to give you 7 points, 5 boards, and was legitimately their best rim protector. Now you got Anyak Boyaki, who's been able to give you about 8 boards, 8.5 points per game. He's the only guy active for this team that's giving you north of 3.7 rebounds per game. And then you layer that with the fact that Fresno State is outside the top 310 with regards to turnovers on a per possession basis. You've had Isaiah Hill be able to give you about 32.5% three-point shooting, 6.5 assists, 12.5 points per contest, while Xavier Dussel, Donovan Yap, they combine for 20 points, shooting that neighborhood about 37% from three themselves. And if there is one thing Fresno State does well, it's that their top 4 scorers all do shoot at least 76.5% free throw line, but yet as a collective, they still shoot 66.4% at the free throw line. Going against the Utah State team has been a tough customer all season long. They're a top 35 team with regards to points scored on a per possession basis. This despite the fact that they only shoot about 32.5% from 3 points. Great out of Sabor. He has been great. 18 points, 9 boards, 3 assists, steal, 1.5 blocks per contest, and then Darius Brown is really the guy that brings it together. 6.5 assists to 1.8 turnovers per game. He shoots about 37% from 3, but really doesn't force up a lot of shots. And for Fresno State, they just don't guard the three-point arc as well. Now, it could be to their benefit a little bit more here because Utah State just doesn't take as many threes, but for Fresno State, 332nd in all of college basketball in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. Meanwhile, you got a Utah State team that's been able to do a really good job locking it down from 3. Number 3 in all of college basketball, and that's the main bread and butter for Fresno State. I think that this is just a horrible matchup for Fresno State, and this has just been legitimately a horrible Fresno State team. So my total at 144.5 here at the 144. I'm going to be looking at the over of Utah State. I'm willing to lay up to 12 with them. 659, 660 on the betting board. Colorado State plays us in Nevada. Nevada is an underdog of 7 to 7.5 points. Totals between 137.5 and 139.5, and with Colorado State, I did set them as just a 5-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Colorado State. The concern with them is their defense. They're well outside the top 100 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, and this is a Nevada team that they don't allow you to get a lot of second chance opportunities on the offensive glass. Nevada has also been able to do a really nice job of being able to lock it down from 3-point range. They're 49th in the country in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. Meanwhile, we've got a Colorado State team that's 176th with this regard, and at home that balloons up to about 35%. You've got Jared Lucas on the side of Nevada, who's been able to do a nice job, give you about 18 points per contest, and what goes under the radar with him is that he's able to switch from man-to-man to zone defense just very, very seamlessly. Now, Isaiah Stevens is, in my opinion, the best player out there on the floor. He plays for Colorado State. He's able to give you about 16.5 points, 7.5 assists, shoots 46.5% from 3-point range for a Colorado State team that is a top 35 team nationally with regards to points scored on a per possession basis. I like what Nikwe Clifford, along Joel Scott have been able to bring to the table. They both supply 12 to 12.5 points per contest, combined about 13.5 rebounds per game, but for Nevada, they are going to have a nice leg up with regards to the glass, with Nick Davidson being able to supply about 7.5 rebounds per game. But for Nevada, they don't necessarily get a bunch of second chances themselves. They just prevent you from getting those second chances. And then Keenan Blackshear has been oh so efficient. 5 boards, 5 assists, steal and a half, 15 points per contest. Not a guy that by any stretch of the imagination is going to light it up from 3-point range, but I do think that Nevada going to be able to do a strong job holding in this game. I recognize that it's tough to go up to Colorado and to be able to hold in there, but I do think that Nevada is very much equipped for being able to do so. It's a top 50 team with regards to points scored on a per possession basis, only seeing a drop off of about 7.3 points fewer per 100 possessions when they leave home. So I did set my line at a 5. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Nevada. I think that Nevada, they continue to play some relatively solid defense, but at the same time, their offense has really been able to travel. Nevada, in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, is a top 25 team in all of college basketball, so I do think that you get some very efficient offense here as well. Looking at the over and the points with Nevada, and we're wrap things up with 661, 662 on the card. It is San Diego State playing against San Jose State. Old St. Josie State is a 22.5 point underdog with your total 138, and I do think that San Diego State is going to be able to win this game, and they're going to be able to do so convincingly, but I set my line at a 19. I'm going to be willing to take the points. Now, if San Jose State has been wretched with their defense, they're outside the top 300 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. They're well outside the top 225 in terms of rebound rate, but you do have one guy down low, and Adrame Dionge, who's been able to give you about 4.5 boards and a block and a half per contest, and I do like their big four. 2 guys in Tibet Gronair, Lontre Anderson, that have good versatility as big guys that are able to pop the three. They combine to shoot about 37.5% from distance, 23 points per game. And then Alvaro Cardenas, 5.5 assists to just 2 turnovers per game. And keep in mind, it was a while back, but first time these two teams played, San Jose State, it was on their home floor. They held in there. That was an 81-78 game. In that affair, San Jose State only shot about 9 of 27 from 3. They did shoot 23 of 25 at the free throw line, and this is a bunch that they do a relatively solid job of being able to just hold in there. Each of their top 4 guys shoot at least 72.5% from the free throw line, with MJ Amy being able to shoot about 36.5% from distance, or sitting there about 16 points per contest. And San Diego State, ever since then, they've been a much different defense. San Diego State, a top 35 team with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, and San Diego State does see a big rise just with the way that they play in general when they are at home. San Diego State, overall, in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, checking in 30th in all of college basketball, allowing about 14.5 points fewer for 100 possessions at home, and they've got the best player up there on the floor, Jaden Ledee, 20.5 points, 8.5 boards, shooting 41.5% from 3, but San Diego State is only shooting about 32% from 3. Lamont Butler, Darian Trammell, they just haven't been able to piggyback off the success that they had last season. A combined 17 points, 5.5 assists, and 2.7 turnovers per game, but they combined to shoot less than 30% from 3-point range as well, like Reese Six and Waters throwing in there about 11 points per contest, but I do think that things gotten a little bit out of sorts. San Jose State team has been playing very harebrained. They give up a lot of points, but they're able to knock down some shots themselves. So I did set my total 141. I don't think that we see both teams reach north of 75 like we saw the first time around, but San Jose State, they do a nice job not turning the ball over a ton, so I'm going to be looking at the over and the points here with San Jose State, and that'll wrap things up for the Tuesday edition of Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. If you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have wonderful ways we offer those in. First one is by Twitter/X-Timeline at @JNet_81. Keep in mind, letters CM, the mean does not matter, so as per usual, please just send these into the timeline, and the other way, that's find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, hear about fire and whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. A big thanks once again to Nick Lorensen of Mid-Major Madness for joining me in the last segment, and I'm coming at you guys every single day throughout the college basketball season on this podcast, so I'll be back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you.
With so many options, why choose Arizona State University?
For me, the only online option was ASU because of the quality. Their faculty was really involved with their students and care about your personal journey. The dedication to my personal development from my professors, that's been extremely valuable to me.
Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online. That's a degree better. Explore more than 300 undergraduate, graduate, and certificate programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
If your job at a healthcare facility includes disinfecting against viruses, you know prevention is the best medicine, and maintaining healthy spaces starts with a healthy cleaning routine. Grainger's world-class supply chain helps ensure you have the quality products you need when you need them, from disinfectants and cleaning supplies to personal protective equipment, so you can help deliver a clean bill of health. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.